Hey guys, tonight we're not sailing into pirate-infested waters or climbing aboard splintery death traps held together by sea salt and wishful thinking. No peg legs, no parrots, no sunburnt bandits arguing over who stole whose moldy biscuits. Nope, tonight we're trudging across the snowy, vodka-soaked landscape of Imperial Russia. A place where winters last longer than your last relationship. Boots were always wet for reasons no one fully understood. And somehow, the entire empire ran on vodka. Literally. Bureaucrats, peasants, nobles, czars, everyone was basically powered by fermented potatoes and national trauma. But before we get cozy in this frosty historical chaos, take a second to like the video and subscribe, but only if you actually enjoy my strange little corner of the internet. If not, that's okay. The czars once survived on taxes from vodka. I can survive without one subscription. Leave a comment telling me where you're listening from and what time it is for you. Because, you guessed it, somehow it's always 2 a.m. somewhere. And honestly, this topic feels exactly like the kind of thing people Google at 2 a.m. anyway. Now dim those lights, turn on a fan for that soft, white noise snowstorm effect, sink into your pillow, get comfortable, and maybe tuck your feet in, not because rats might nibble your toes tonight, but because we're entering the Russian Empire, where even metaphors can catch frostbite. Let's pause for a second. Have you ever wondered what life was actually like in an empire where vodka wasn't just a drink, but a financial strategy? Where the government realized, people drink a lot. What if we taxed that? Actually, what if we monopolized that? Actually, wait, what if the entire budget depended on it? Did people really drink that much? How did a liquid become a political tool, an economic engine, and, somehow, a symbol of national identity? Tonight, we're slipping deep into the mildly absurd, mildly tragic, mildly hilarious world of Russian history. A land of sprawling palaces built by overworked peasants, endless forests, questionable decisions by men with incredible beards, and enough vodka consumption to make modern health departments faint. We'll wade through icy roads, bustling taverns, and tax policies that make you wonder if the finance ministers were okay. Spoiler, they were not. We'll meet czars who tried to reform the empire, and others who woke up, sipped vodka, and said, seems fine. But we're taking this journey slowly, calmly, like a sleigh gliding over fresh snow. No rushing, no drama. Just the soft unraveling of a strange chapter in history that shaped millions of lives, and eventually helped topple an empire. So settle in. Feel the cold fade into the comfort of your blankets. Let your breathing slow. Let your mind drift into the vast, icy horizon where peasants complained, officials schemed, and vodka barrels rolled as if guided by destiny. Tonight, we explore how an empire rose, ran, faltered, and froze, one sip at a time. Ready? Let's begin. Chapter 1. A dark, moody tavern scene. The tavern is quiet, too quiet for a place built on conversation, laughter, and the soft clatter of glasses. Instead, the air feels thick, wrapped in deep shadows that dance along the wooden walls. Only a few lanterns flicker weakly from their hooks, each one casting a warm amber glow that struggles to hold back the darkness. Dust drifts lazily through the beams of light, moving like tiny spirits suspended in the hush of evening. At a wooden table scarred by years of use, a single glass sits waiting. It is large, simple, and clear, its surface catching the faint golden light like a fragment of trapped fire. A bottle is lifted, not rushed, not careless, but with slow, deliberate weight. As the clear spirit is poured, the liquid glides downward in a smooth, steady stream, filling the glass with a cold shimmer. The sound is soft, yet unmistakable, almost ceremonial. The gentle whisper of an empire pouring its future into a cup. The tavern around it remains still, almost reverent. In this moment, the glass is more than a drink. It is a symbol of habit, of dependency, of centuries of choices that built a nation and slowly tangled it in unintended consequences. The amber light ripples across the surface of the spirit, creating patterns reminiscent of frozen rivers stretching across Russian winter landscapes. The drink seems innocent at first, clear, clean, silent. But behind its stillness lies a history that shaped countless lives, economies, and rulers. Vodka, simple as it appeared, had become an invisible engine powering Russia's empire, sometimes smoothing its rise, sometimes deepening its troubles. The tavern air carries a faint chill, as though the cold of the steppes has slipped inside. Wooden beams creak softly overhead, and somewhere in the distance, boots crunch on snow. It is easy to imagine a traveler entering this space generations ago, seeking warmth, seeking companionship, seeking the brief relief that a glass of vodka could bring after a day of harsh labor or long journeying. What no one realized then was that a single drink was part of a cycle much larger than any tavern, larger than any life. For peasants, vodka had become both comfort and burden. For landowners, both currency and control. For czars, both revenue and risk. The government taxed it, relied on it, and came to depend on the steady stream of income it produced. The more the empire grew, the more its treasury leaned on the bottle. And the more it leaned, the more the people beneath it felt the weight. The tavern scene softens further. The amber light dims, flickering as though uncertain of its own strength. Shadows settle more deeply into the corners, stretching like memory across the floor. The single glass on the table now glows faintly, reflecting a quiet truth, that sometimes an empire does not fall from dramatic battles or sudden disasters. Sometimes it weakens in gradual, nearly invisible ways, through habits, dependencies, and choices made so slowly that no one notices the shift until it is too late. The glass is full now. Its surface rests perfectly still, mirroring the lantern's trembling flame. It is beautiful in its simplicity, calming in its clarity, inviting in its familiarity. Yet, beneath that serene surface lies the story of a nation balancing on the edge between resilience and ruin. In the hush of the tavern, the rise and fall of Russia's imperial dependence on vodka feels less like a political saga and more like a quiet warning whispered across time. That what comforts us can also control us. That what strengthens us can slowly siphon our strength. That even the brightest empires can dim, not from one moment of collapse, but from countless small surrenders poured one glass at a time. And so, the tavern remains still, ember-lit, timeless, holding its silent glass of clear spirit, its symbol of an empire's slow descent, and the echoes of history waiting gently in the shadows. Chapter 2. The Tsar's Snazzy Getaway. A Day in the Empire of Vodka. Hey guys, welcome back to this slumber party of historical hilarity. Tonight, we're diving into something more dramatic than your last attempt at yoga, the twilight of the Russian Empire, where the palaces stood grand and crumbling at the same time, just like your ambitions at 3 a.m. Picture colossal Tsar palaces silhouetted against the sky, looking oh so majestic, but also like the middle-aged man at a wedding who's one drink away from karaoke. But first, do you want to know what it was like to actually live in an empire where vodka fueled brunches? Or perhaps navigate social life where every toast could end in a beautiful disaster? Have you ever wondered what it's like to be a noble twirling in a hall while trying not to spill your drink, or a commoner trying to decipher what the phrase, "just one more shot," really means? But more importantly, how do you keep a straight face while your glass brings down an empire? So dim those lights, turn on a fan, and get nice and cozy. Trust me, you're truly about to wish you had a sliver of that magical drink in your hand. Congratulations! You've just woken up in 1750 Russia, where the only frosty thing colder than the winter is the tension at the Tsar's party. As the sun sets, the palatial silhouette looms, rugged yet regal. Think of it, a building so opulent it could make a peacock feel insecure. These Tsarist dwellings are adorned with gold leaf, twisting columns, and chandeliers that reflect the light, as if they've had their fair share of vodka too. But lo, they're also showing the wear and tear of time. Plastered walls peeling like last week's taco takeout, crumbling like your diet resolutions after the first pizza party of the year. Standing outside amidst the quiet chaos of the evening, a lone broken glass catches your eye like a sad little fate awaiting its dramatic reveal, symbolizing not just the drink consumed within, but the very downfall of an empire that had some serious attachment issues with its national beverage. You can almost hear it whisper, "You thought this party was going to end well, didn't you?" Step inside. The first thing you notice is the air, a delightful hazy blend of human ambition and desperation cloaked in a blanket of vodka vapors that could make a lighthouse beam of hope blush. Joyful shouts, okay, more like riotous belches, fill the room, echoing off walls painted with the tales of triumph and tribulation. As you glance around, men in fancy frock coats, embroidered to perfection, and women swathed in silks that shimmer more than fireworks on a summer's night, jostle and toast to victories, losses,
and whatever drama befell the last noggin's worth of vodka. The sound of clinking glasses fills the air, making it sound like a chorus of glasses begging for sweet release. One mighty noble, visibly intoxicated and inexplicably convinced he could sing, launches
into a spirited rendition of a folk song, which sounds more like a straining walrus trying to recall a childhood lullaby. But hey, it's all in good fun, right? And who can't relate to that vague desire to embarrass yourself at a party? Now, let's chat about the atmosphere. It's a grand, yet bizarre blend of elegance and chaos, kind of like the inside of your friend's apartment after they decided to host just one drink that spiraled into an around the world in vodka party. The cacophony of laughter, off-key singing, and clinking glasses swirls around you like a sentient tornado of mirthful calamity. But hold up, it's not all sparkles and good cheer. There's an underlying tension, like that second before a sneeze, when several distinguished guests whisper about the latest vodka taxes, the government's little trick of squeezing more rubles from an inebriated populace. More than a third of the Tsar's taxes came from your beloved vodka folks. Imagine being at a party where every drink poured comes with its own little tax bracket. Talk about an unsavory hangover waiting to happen. As you mingle, a broad-shouldered man with a proud moustache stumbles over to you, barely steadying himself amid his clinking glass up to a toast. "To victory!" he bellows, raising his glass high, only to promptly knock into a nearby chandelier. The likely result? A spattering of glass and an impassioned debate about who paid for the repairs last time. Much like family gatherings, when the awkward cousin brings up that one time you borrowed a sweater and never returned it. And let's not forget the kabaks, the local taverns where common folk gather to sip their vodka like a warm, soothing hug. Picture them as the 18th century version of that one cozy cafe you keep threatening to leave but never do, where everyone's personal issues come wrapped in a side of fermented potatoes. In these establishments, camaraderie flows like the vodka itself, unstoppable and often best enjoyed in larger quantities. You'd squeeze yourself into a wooden bench, laugh until your cheeks hurt, and ponder life's mysteries like, why can I never find matching socks? Or, how did we come to toast to a drink that's feeding the empire's empty coffers? Ah, sweet oblivion. The strains of traditional folk songs float through the air as you bond with fellow revelers over mutual dissatisfaction with the government's misguided policies. You raise a glass in solidarity because, let's face it, this is basically your therapy session disguised as a boozy adventure. Who needs a life coach when you have vodka and your fellow comrades to share in woes that range from pestilence to persistent land taxes? As the night wears on, the initial thrill fades slowly into a warm, fuzzy blanket of regret and revelry. You find yourself staring into your glass and pondering profound questions about life, while simultaneously witnessing yet another noble arm wrestling. Competition over a wager of several bottles of homemade moonshine. In a world where the fate of empires is decided by mere drunken bet, you'd think they'd have written their constitutions very differently. By the time dawn creeps in, thin like the fog over a Russian river, you realize this empire ran on more than vodka. It ran on spirit, community, and slightly misguided reverence for a drink that brings people together in sloppy, often absurd solidarity. And while you may forget half the night's escapades, one thing lingers, just like an annoying earworm. You leave the palace, not just with a few years off your lifespan, but with stories worthy of retelling over the next vibrant glass of vodka, the hallmark of an era where pleasure and peril danced hilariously into history's embrace. Chapter 3: The Delicate Dance of Distillation. Ah, the grand tapestry of the Russian Empire in the 18th century. Picture it. On one side, an opulent hall bathed in golden light, its chandeliers glimmering like stars caught in a fancy spiderweb. On the other side, a smoky, rough-hewn peasant tavern filled with laughter, brawls, and the unmistakable scent of fermented dreams. Yes, we're talking vodka. It's kind of like a fairy tale, where the hero finds his treasure, but instead of gold, it's solely spirituous liquid, vodka specifically. Now, let's dive into the root and branch of this situation, shall we? In one of those lavish halls, you find a czar. Let's call him Ivan the particularly loquacious. Ivan was known for two things: hosting parties that lasted longer than your last relationship, and believing that vodka was the secret ingredient to good governance. Why tax the people when you can just toast to their health? He may have mused, sloshing his drink like a toddler with a juice box. In fact, by the 19th century, alcohol taxes made up a whopping third of the Russian Empire's revenue. It was as if they just figured out a way to tax happiness and then thought, yes, please, more of that. Meanwhile, in the peasant tavern, the kabak, conditions were far less gilded. Entering was akin to stepping into a giant barrel of despair, fun, and maybe a hint of something unidentified. The walls probably looked like they had been intentionally smeared with the previous night's dinner, and your seat could very well have been a wobbly stool constructed of whatever wood was available. Perhaps even parts of your ex-neighbor's cart. But boy, the spirit inside those walls was as fiery as the hooch being served. Scented with the whiff of turnip stew, a culinary delight that could only be rivaled by lumpy oatmeal, it was a place where dreams were both fermented and promptly forgotten. What were those peasants thinking as they poured their hard-earned cash into a glass bottle of the good stuff? Imagine a town crier announcing, "Every handmade shirt you've toiled over for days will now buy you just one bumpy ride on the Vodka Express." It's almost like treating a McDonald's Big Mac like a 5-star gourmet meal. Ever have that sinking feeling of emptying your wallet at a drive-thru? You felt like too much investment had yielded too little return. But let's not forget about the vital link between these two lavish worlds. The clear glass bottle that connected vodka and state control, as if they were distant relatives
who just so happened to drop by for supper one night. This bottle was the star of many a dramatic scene. 1 sip for the Tsar, 2 sips for the peasant. No wonder it was glass, much better looking than a wooden mug filled with the remnants of last week's trusted gruel, right? Now, let's talk quality control, because very little in life is straightforward in Russia at this time. Peasants had to
distill their own spirits, and they weren't exactly using high-tech equipment. Ever tried to make a soufflé in a microwave? Pretty much the same principles apply. The process of distillation was like crafting a cocktail from ingredients that came off a trading ship still navigating the rough sea, only without the luxury of convenience or class. Results? Let's just say that some batches could raise your eyebrows faster than your neighbor's pet pig on a roller coaster. Of course, if the state was involved, and let's be honest, they usually were, you knew it would be a wild ride. The authorities charged a fee, a maneuver that essentially turned every tavern owner into an unwilling accountant who might also occasionally juggle pineapples to keep the patrons entertained. "Last call! Get your tax-free spirits here!" echoed through the halls, shaking their very foundations, even as loyal subjects danced clumsily, desperately trying to avoid spilling their precious vodka. But there also came a day when the magical connection between the Tsar and the kabak grew dangerously fragile. You see, vodka began to flood the market like a 2-for-1 sale at your favorite convenience store. Everyone got a little too merry, a little too rowdy, and soon even the Tsar himself was muttering, "Maybe too much of a good thing isn't good after all." It was akin to waking up the day after a long bender, looking in the bathroom mirror and thinking, "How on earth did I get here? Was that last round of shots with Uncle Boris really necessary?" By the time the dust settled, after countless raucous nights that involved far more than just passable singing, Russia found itself befuddled, unpredictably caught between the pursuit of peasant joy and Tsarist tyranny. In short, it was a cautionary tale, warning travelers against getting too cozy with vodka. Well, at least it made for some great party stories. So here you are, sandwiched between the fairy tale hall of opulence and the robust, earthy tavern of the people who made it all possible. You start to realize that in the extravagant embrace of vodka, both sides somehow find a way to thrive on mess and magic. It's almost poetic in a way, or at the very least, mildly interesting. And just like that, as you absorb this slice of Russian history, it feels as if the mystical bottle of glass is swirling before you, revealing the absurdity and majestic folly of it all, the good, the bad, and the vodka, and the... Chapter 4. In the Grip of the Clear Spirit. Hey guys, tonight we embark on a frosty journey that's colder than your Aunt Mabel's gaze when you insist on wearing that ridiculous hat. Into the heart of Russian vodka lore. We're diving into a world where the word water, or voda in Russian, is slap-you-in-the-face ironic. You see, what was once innocent and clear quickly transformed into the fiery elixir that could warm even the frostiest of situations. But first, let's ponder. Have you ever downed a bottle of something only to wake up wondering who let the squirrels into your brain for a wild party? Or do you recall that awkward moment at a family gathering when Uncle Boris is 3 drinks in and suddenly your life choices become the hot topic of conversation. What if you had to deal with that, but every single night, and the after party was held in the tavern down the street? So, let's dim the lights, put on a fan, and snuggle in. We're about to slip through time like an undercooked pierogi sliding off a plate. Congratulations. You've just catapulted into 1750 Russia, right at the peak of state-driven vodka revelry. But remember, no one brought snacks. Step outside. The air is prickly with the bite of cold, and as you stroll through snow-draped streets, you can practically smell the vodka wafting through the cracks of every distant tavern, mixing seamlessly with the aroma of something that could either be fresh-baked bread or last week's cabbage stew. It's hard to tell what exactly is wafting through the air, but it's definitely an experience, one that calls to your spirit and might just summon some less than sober logic to your brain. Now, let's talk labels. You stumble upon a disheveled stall where an elderly vendor, let's call him Grigor, has an assortment of glass bottles. One bottle stands out. It's clear, pristine, and labeled Voda. You pick it up and marvel at its deceptive innocence, akin to finding out your dear grandmother's secret recipe for happy family gatherings actually just combines tears with pure vodka. Back in those glorious 18th century days, water was scarce, so naturally, folks got creative with their hydration. Instead of sipping herbal tea or water from an untrustworthy source, they just downed a glass of vodka and called it a day. Rugged life indeed. It's like filling your water bottle with energy drinks during a hot day at the beach. Does it quench your thirst? Not really, but man, do you feel alive? Grigor leans in conspiratorially, his beard bristling like an angry cat. "It's only water, my friend," he exclaims with an enthusiasm that suggests he's indulging one too many times himself. You can't help but wonder how the glorious state control over distillation played into the vodka-water conundrum. It felt like a bizarre alcoholic game show. What will it be today, folks? A refreshing splash of water or a hefty sip of "What have I done with my life?" Throughout the 15th and 16th centuries, state control over distillation transformed innocent little water into a cash cow. Vodka became the golden child, or should we say, the golden bottle, of Russian coffers. Imagine the scene. Tsar after tsar, sitting on their thrones, plotting how to squeeze every last ruble out of their beloved subjects, pouring vodka with one hand while clenching the tax ledger with the other. "Let them drink vodka," they thundered, probably fueled by that exact beverage. "It's good for revenue." But as it turns out, governing an empire with vodka as your cornerstone leads to surprising complications. Nations thrive on revenue, like your local coffee shop thrives on your caffeine addiction. But it turns out you can't just keep pouring vodka down your subjects' throats without consequences. At some point, the party gets a little too rowdy, and you find yourself having to call for Dr. Vodka, not so good for you. You find yourself in a bustling kabak, where laughter and rowdy song collide with the scent of something that might have once swum in a river, but is now best described as the essence of rustic cooking gone wrong. It's the kind of place where the vodka flows like the Neva River, but the humor in the air could only be described as a combination of a boisterous bear and that one thick friend who tries to dance but mostly just bumps into things. You glance over at a group of peasants, a delightful mix of life's dreamers and drunken philosophers, sharing tales of their vodka experiences. Did you hear about Boris? He drank a pint and tried to negotiate with a tree, one exclaims, and everyone bursts into fits of laughter. Another chimes in, I've had relationships as solid as that tree. I might actually stand a better chance with it. Vodka was bonding people together faster than they could scroll through their phones, creating a collective freedom that was both liberating and hazardous. Who knew liquid joy could lead to such grand aspirations of tree negotiation? As you soak in this paradox of delight and despair, the reality strikes you. Vodka was about more than mere intoxication. It was the lifeblood of survival, peppered with laughter and a precariously high chance of waking up in a ditch. The bottle was always half full, unless, of course, you had a hangover. Then, the bottle merely served as a heart-wrenching reminder of the night before, like an unwanted text from an ex. The spirit of vodka, wild, triumphant, and utterly ridiculous, was at the core of Russian society, intertwining the fates of both noble and peasant alike. Isn't life just like that? Full of messy interconnections, absurd choices, and maybe a splash or two of vodka. As the night wears on and waves of laughter ripple through the air, you can't help but become part of this grand spectacle, oscillating between history and humor. The scene hums around you with the electricity of debauchery and timid dreams. When morning comes, as it always does, will the legendary vodka continue to flow, or will the hangover catch up, both humorously and historically? Well, that's a story for another time, my friend. Chapter 5. Gather round for a drink. Or 10. Hey guys, tonight let's wrap ourselves up in the frosty embrace of 1750s Russia, where the winters are colder than your taste in music at a family gathering. Picture this: snowflakes fluttering down like confused little fairies, and peasants, bundled tighter than a loaf of bread, huddling around flickering fires. But instead of roasting marshmallows or sharing ghost stories, they're sipping on a warm, frothy brew called kvass, because you can only wring so much joy out of a potato before adding some fizzy, mildly sour mystery to the mix. Isn't it funny how the peak of socializing involves hovering over a cauldron of steaming liquid while discussing life goals that revolve around avoiding frostbite? You've got a bunch of folks, full bellies of homemade stew, ready to engage in something deeper than their mediocre vodka philosophy. So, go ahead, take a moment to like, subscribe, and maybe comment on which cousin you'd like to bring to this snowy gathering. Because, let's be honest, we've all got that one relative who'd be a total hit at the drink-fueled debates. Now, let's dim those lights, kick on a fan for Ambience. Who doesn't want to mix a little wind with their snowdrift dreams? Nestle in comfortably, perhaps with a warm blanket or one of those questionable-looking socks you just can't part with. As we dive deeper into this winter wonderland, ask yourself, what would your ideal winter gathering look like? Would there be a snowman that doubled as a drink holder? And might your drink of choice be a curious mix of fruit punch and fermented root vegetables? Congratulations! You've just woken up in the land of snowy surprises. Peasant life is just around the corner, and it's about to get chillier than a penguin's afternoon nap. It's time to venture out of that cozy hovel, and wow, what a feast for the senses. The air carries a mix of sharp cold and earthy aromas, like someone spilled a sack of turnips by the fireplace. The ground crunches beneath your feet, each step accompanied by a symphony of sounds reminiscent of the popcorn machine at that one sketchy carnival you went to in college. As you step outside, clusters of peasants huddle together, hands close to the crackling flames, warming themselves like bread rolls in an oven. Instead of exchanging pleasantries, they flick glances at each other, every tight-lipped smirk hinting at tales of vodka-induced antics. One fellow, let's call him Dmitri, is holding up a cup of kvass with the enthusiasm of someone who just discovered an old mixtape. Ah, what better drink than this fine potion of the noble beat and a smidgen of hope, he proclaims, almost spilling over in his elation. Kvass, my friends, is like the lukewarm cousin of soda, rendering water as obsolete as a rotary phone. You take a sip and, oh, delightful. It's got this robust but slightly fermented flavor that can only be described as, I've made poor life choices, but still have some self-respect. After all, a bit of kvass is better than your last relationship, and it really helps take the edge off those frosty mornings. But as you settle in and listen to their banter, you can't help but notice the artistry that goes into peasant life. There's an unspoken camaraderie among these cold, averse souls. When someone shares a story of neighborly poltergeists, or the legendary goat that refused to move from in front of the tavern, bursts of laughter erupt, warming the atmosphere despite the chill. You cup your own drink and soak in the scene. How did this whole mayhem of spirits, laughter, and kvass become the lifeblood of their gatherings? Is it merely to survive the biting cold, or to escape from the relentless, numbing weight of day-to-day serfdom? Maybe it's a subtle reminder that life, while undoubtedly tough, can be punctuated with heartwarming hilarity. In these moments, the essence of vodka subtly tiptoes through the kvass, almost like a familiar friend slipping into a room full of strangers. Was it really all harmless fun, or were the peasants masking deeper struggles, buoyed up by spirits and a hearty laugh? For the Russian state, vodka tax revenues were a royal cash cow, and perhaps that's the real secret behind winter gatherings, complete with hazy memories about taming a wild bear, or a sheep that schemed its way into the tavern. Did you hear about Ivan? He tried to negotiate with a tree after a pint of vodka, roars one festive voice, and laughter ripples like a warm wave. Honestly, who thinks about negotiating with inanimate objects while 2 bottles in? In this land, bears are just nature's way of ensuring no one takes life too seriously. After all, true wisdom comes from experience, or perhaps just remembering whatever the suspicious-looking old lady was serving up at the last party. The kvass might tickle your throat, but the vodka? It tickles your memory, or at least it tries, because the next morning there's a marvelous chance you might awake with a bear-sized headache and a realization that you should probably stick to tea next time. And so, as the night draws on and warmth spreads through your bones, laughter intertwines stories, crafting unbreakable bonds over this peculiar yet cherished elixir. Life is a swirling tapestry filled with hiccups, random tales, and perhaps a splash of kvass to wash it all down. Because what else would keep the frost at bay and the spirits afloat? Chapter 6. Spirits in the Stone Room. Hey guys, tonight we find ourselves in the company of a rather dedicated monk who could easily be dubbed a medieval mixologist, if such a title ever existed. Imagine this. We're stepping into a stone chamber of a humble monastery, the air thick with the mingling scents of candle wax and... what's that? Oh yes, the unmistakable aroma of vapors rising from the first attempts to distill spirits. This monk, let's call him Brother Ivan, could probably win a gold medal in the Holy Olympics of brewing. Picture the ambience, a glow from the flickering fire beneath the alembic stills, creating shadows that dance as if they've had one too many nips of the clear stuff already. The ethereal light makes the stone walls shimmer like something out of the Stones of Stonehenge fan club meeting. It's the kind of place where you might think deep thoughts, like how to ask your cat what it really thinks of you. Spoiler, it's probably planning a coup. As you settle into this vibrant scene, you may wonder, how did vodka become the drink of choice across such a vast, frosty landscape? Didn't anyone consider switching it up with some herbal tea, or perhaps some spirited apple cider? I mean, can you imagine a monk going, "Yes, Brother Boris, let's make a toast to more vodka," while absent-mindedly pouring some apple juice instead? The scandal. Let's get real for a moment. Medieval monks were brewing up magic more potent than any potion you could find in a mystical forest. Their distillation experiments were akin to the scientific method, except the only substance on the table was hope and a barrel of excess grain. It's not like they had the luxury of, "Let's Google that," when confronted with fermentation dilemmas, right? What a bonkers time to live, really. So, while Brother Ivan stirs his bubbling concoction, sweating like a sinner in church, the question looms. Why was vodka such a crucial part of Russian life? Practically the lifeblood. We're treading into slippery territory, like trying to dance on ice while wearing roller skates. Let's take a moment to imagine the reactions of those holy figures as they sampled their early spirits. Holy water? More like holy roller. This could put some serious enthusiasm into our prayers, Brother Ivan might chuckle, perhaps just before the herbs came into play and everything got a little out of hand. The man was a genius, blending grain and patience until something wonderful, albeit potentially blurrily remembered, emerged. But it wasn't all mirth and merriment. For every sip of their concoction, you could bet there was a monk shaking his head, grimacing at the notion that the state would later capitalize on their pious experiments with something even more sinister: taxes. Oh yes, that's right. Alcohol taxes would soon account for nearly a third of the state's revenue. Imagine a monk beaming with pride at his distilled whiskey, being handed a bill larger than his hopes and dreams. Wait a minute. The state wants how much for my holy water? Imagine him clutching the alembic like it's the last piece of candy at a dentist convention. This wasn't just any spirit. It was a miracle distilled from grains, tempered with determination, and garnished with the occasional prayer. How could such creation be treated as a simple commodity? Yet there they were, at the mercy of the emerging state control. Fasts forward to the 19th century, when it dawned on the authorities. Hey, we've got a great gig going here. People are buying vodka like it's bottled sunshine. Let's tax it until our taxes look like a bear that just chugged 5 bottles. This wasn't just economics. We'd entered the twilight of absurdity, where the state figured out that taxes on this clear elixir could fuel their expenses like a bear-sized bonfire. You might find yourself giggling at the thought of Brother Ivan being tasked with reminding his fellow monks how their creations could soon toss inflation into full swing. Absolutely, we're making wine and spirits. Just remember to save some for the church, or at least until the king's next banquet. It's like winning a honky-tonk jackpot and then realizing you've got to split with your accountant. In true medieval form, each sip and guffaw captured a moment of history, and as vodka flowed, the norms of society began to bubble up just like the brew. The vodkas of the times weren't just for quenching thirst. They became communal elixirs that packed barrooms and huddled men, swapping tales that may or may not have featured "that one time I wrestled a bear for last orders." With each passing winter, the monk's legacy became clear. His craft didn't just thaw the chill, it created bonds so warm they could melt icebergs. So as Brother Ivan perfected his distillation process under the flickering candlelight, each drop added a layer to the peculiar tapestry of Russian culture, woven with vodka, damaged pride, and just a hint of the absurd. And there you have it, life in a medieval monastery filled with spirits that would not only intoxicate, but nourish a nascent empire. But please, for goodness sake, remember to drink responsibly, because a well-dressed bear asking you for a round is totally not as charming as it sounds. In fact, it's downright terrifying. Now, let's roll into the next chapter of our vodka-fueled history adventure. Chapter 7. Ivan the Terrible's Tavern Tango. Hey guys, tonight we find ourselves in a moment cooler than a polar bear in sunglasses. The reign of Ivan the Terrible and his thirst for vodka. Yes, you heard that right. Ivan wasn't just known for his fiery temper and occasional tantrums that made 5-year-olds look subdued. He was also a very serious business mogul, or as serious as one can be while standing atop a recently opened state tavern, grinning like he just found a 5-ruble note in the laundry. Picture this. It's the 16th century, and taverns aren't just places to sip. They are sophisticated establishments ruled by the pressure of state control and the potent aroma of something far stronger than your average pub fare. The air is thick with anticipation. You can almost hear the jingle of coins rattling as average folk clamber to exchange their rubles for vodka. Not just any vodka, mind you, but the kind that would make even the toughest bouncer at a modern-day nightclub weep and rethink his life choices. As you meander through this smoky ambience, you might wonder, what was it about vodka that kept folks coming back, wallets wide open, even in the midst of a gnarly winter? Was it the warmth? The triumph over freezing temperatures? Or maybe, just maybe, the ability to forget that time Uncle Boris tried to ride a bear and ended up in the town fountain? Spoiler, he did not emerge victorious. Now, let's dive deeper into the brazenly bold world of 1750s Russia. Not only did vodka warm the hearts of peasants and nobles alike, but it also fueled an empire's economy. Imagine Ivan the Terrible, with those piercing eyes calculating like a squirrel eyeing acorn supply before winter. There he stands, just off stage, practically licking his lips as he watches his newly minted state tavern, equipped with shiny kabak signs that beckon the brave and the foolish alike. It's a scene so majestic it might make you think you'd stumbled into an over-the-top historical reenactment. Yet, amidst the boisterous laughter and cascading mugs, there lies a riveting truth. The state hadn't just poured spirits into the cups of its citizens for merriment. Oh no, they were concocting something far more nefarious: revenues and taxes. Can you imagine the uproar when news spread that 1/3 of the empire's tax revenue was coming from the very thing that turned village life into a merry carousel of chaos? Sounds like the kind of budgeting strategy only a few brave accountants might dream up after a few too many nightcaps. Let's pause for a moment and take a mental picture. Imagine strolling into a tavern. It's lit with flickering candlelight. A romantic ambiance, right? Only, in this case, candlelight is dancing like it's on its way to a rave, and if you look closely, the tables might just be slightly damp with spilled vodka and other unidentifiable liquids. You pop a squat on a stool, which feels about as stable as a top-heavy moose, and taking in the surroundings, ponder the big questions. Will you order the herring again? Is Ivan secretly judging your life choices? And why on earth is the fiddler wearing socks with sandals? Ah yes, the fiddler, a true gem of a character, plucking away at his strings like a medieval rock star, completely unaware that he's an essential cog in the great wheel of Russian revelry. If you wanted to drown your sorrows, or just figure out how to dance without stepping on your neighbor's toes, he was your guy. But let's be real, the herring was probably still the more questionable companion of the night. If only it were as good at warming hearts as vodka, right? In this cacophony of vodka, laughter, and questionable decisions, you'd have thought you stepped into the epicenter of Russian culture. People downing shots like they're collecting Pokemon cards, while comically contorting into dance moves that look like modern art trying to escape a fit of laughter. Meanwhile, the state was all smiles, counting its shiny rubles, grinning like a cat who's just swallowed a canary. Can you say partnership goals? Why not bathe in a vat of vodka and declare it a spa day? By the end of the evening, one could find oneself more drunk than a goose at a harvest party, and possibly just as rowdy. Let's transition here. The clock ticks onward, and before anyone realizes it, the 19th century rolls around. Not by choice, mind you, but due to the inevitable passage of time, like a bad haircut that just won't grow out. Authorities instinctively perk up. Hey guys, we've got something great going on here. Let's tax the heck out of that vodka situation. Ivan's legacy, once a splendor of imperial control, now danced dangerously close to absurdity. Imagine the state taxation office throwing a rager. We're getting rich off everyone's nightcaps. Someone grab the calculators and a barrel. That morose glance of a state auditor sneakily studying the nightly vodka intake, half seriously wondering how one might squeeze the last drops of tax revenue like squeezing an orange. Oh wait, the last time they had citrus was likely back in the time of Peter the Great. So here they are, tightening the screws on tavern owners, raising taxes until profits flowed like a river, only to wrap back around and hit the back pockets of peasants like a boomerang. Each dance and sip whispered history, binding families in the warm embrace of vodka, where hearty laughter masked the struggles of a quarreling empire. You see, it wasn't all tension and taxation. It was the absurdity of life itself, lived in the company of slightly tipsy companions, dreaming of bigger, slightly less tipsy futures. So, as Ivan stood watch over the town, the tavern brimming with jovial camaraderie, one could not help but ponder. Perhaps, just perhaps, they all had it figured out. Because if laughter is the best medicine, then surely vodka is just a funnier version of it. Now, as the bard strums another tune, and the tavern erupts into fits of joyful noise, remember, history, much like vodka, is best enjoyed responsibly. And while Ivan may have sipped the strongest spirits, his real legacy lay in leaving tales that would outlast even the hardest hangovers. Ah, Russia, where your vodka comes with a side of wild, and every drink is just another splash in the tumultuous river of history. Chapter 8. The Great Vodka Tax Dance-Off. Hey guys, tonight we dive deeper than a bottomless mug at a Russian tavern. Imagine the chaos, clinking of coins, all while standing in a queue longer than your cousin's rant about his favorite conspiracy theory. Ah yes, it's the golden age of vodka, where every sip is as intoxicating as reading the fine print in a loan agreement. But hold on a second. Have you ever wondered what it was like to live in a society where your taxes were as consistent as your uncle's bad jokes at family gatherings? Or perhaps you've imagined queuing up for a drink, hoping against hope that somehow you wouldn't be the one who stepped in a puddle of spilled vodka, and definitely not that other suspicious liquid. Well, stretch out and get comfy, because we're about to put your imagination to the test in yet another vodka-filled historical conundrum. Congratulations, you've just woken up in 1750 Russia, where the air is thick with the scent of potatoes, borscht, and just a hint of despair. Picture peasants lined up outside an ornate tax chest like it's the latest iPhone release. Only instead of tech gadgets, they wield small coins that are somehow worth more than your cousin's unsolicited opinions. Now, let's set the scene. The tax chest, gleaming in a way that makes it look like it's been polished with the hopes and dreams of the entire village, sits regally as if it were the Iron Throne of finances. And if you thought the line at a fancy coffee shop was long, wait until you see the spectacle of men and women wrapped in layers of wool that smell faintly of desperation, waiting all day just for a chance to relinquish their hard-earned rubles for a shot of vodka. You can almost hear the collective sighs. Why bother purchasing bread when we can secure our future with a drink and a dance? Or maybe just a very heated game of who can hold their vodka the longest. It's not that they disliked hydration, it's just that they liked it in liquid courage form. But wait, what's this? a grumpy bureaucrat is lugging a giant ledger. No, it's not a family recipe book, although it might as well be. This is where all the peasants' bad decisions are recorded alongside the vodka taxes. Imagine the clerk, fogged glasses perched precariously on his nose, furiously scratching down numbers while lamenting the fact that his ink just spilled all over his lunch. "Well, Ivan, looks like today was a wash," he would say. Ah, the joys of administrative work. Who knew numbers could be so intoxicating? Now, hanging heavy in the air is a question that resembles a pressure cooker. How on earth did a nation thrive on this liquid? As you ponder that over a bowl of cold soup, which they decidedly use more for decoration than consumption, consider this. By the late 19th century, alcohol taxes made up nearly 1/3 of Russia's revenue. Picture the officials whispering sweet nothings to their mugs. "You might love the vodka, but we love you for your tax dollars." Let's talk about sound for a minute. Within the tavern walls, every raised voice, every clang of a shot glass sounds like a symphony of chaos, punctuated by the occasional bellow of disapproval from a noble who'd rather drink vintage cabbage juice than mingle with the common folk. "Is it my peasant stench that's bothering you?" they might have mused, too far gone into their self-pity to notice their own untouched glass. And can we take a moment to discuss the exotic food served at these gatherings? While the vodka flowed like a river, the culinary offerings consisted of things that might have been developed during a game of "What do we have lying around?" A buffet of pickled herring and last week's turnips with an aroma that could make a bear cry uncle. This was the hearty Russian diet, where feasting on bitterness was the main course. Yet somehow, amidst the swirling chaos of drunken shenanigans, this intoxicating society found a rhythm, a tango as quick-footed as a ballet dancer on caffeine. Picture it, peasant after peasant, mugs raised enthusiastically as they attempt to execute complex dance moves. Unfortunately, those moves turned out to be somewhat of a gamble, reminiscent of watching a toddler discover gravity for the first time. Elbows collided and feet were stepped on as they twirled around to the lilting tunes of a fiddler whose sole job was to somehow encapsulate the glorious spectacle of drunks dancing like they just stepped on a hive of angry bees. Now, as evening clouds transformed the sky into a velvety cloak and the tavern became storytelling central, the absurdity of it all kept everyone warm, much warmer than the simple wool they wore. You can imagine a drunken bard spouting nonsensical tales of brave battles fought amidst the vodka haze, right there in the corner between the rickety barrel and the noise of someone living their best life by face-planting into the last of the pickled herring. As you reflect on this grand tradition of vodka taxation gone wild, remember, throughout history, as long as there's been vodka, there's been laughter, perhaps even more than there's been solid taxation. So, the next time you pour yourself a drink, just think of those brave souls who spent countless rubles for the best medicine available, a swirling concoction of joy, mischief, and just a hint of mayhem. Chapter 9. The March of the Muddy Booze Brigade. Hey guys, tonight let's stumble into a history lesson so wild it could make a sober historian down a shot of vodka. Because right now, we're marching through mid-18th century Russia. Imagine you're flanked by soldiers so rowdy they look ready to tackle the nearest barrel of spirits rather than the enemy. Picture it, troops trudging through a mudscape that makes your worst camping experience look like a five-star retreat. The only thing more slippery than the terrain? The logistics of keeping this not-so-mighty army upright amidst the mire. You might be wondering, how did a great empire run on vodka? Have you ever tried negotiating with a person in a cell that reeks of potatoes and regret? Ever lost a boot in a puddle of what you pray is just rainwater? And how many of you have considered that the quickest way to tackle a problem could be achieved with a loaded drink instead of a loaded musket? Now, let's talk about the soldiers. They're not just armed with rifles, oh no. They're flanked by wooden carts overflowing with barrels full of vodka. Yes, forget about weapons of war. This campaign's budget is equal parts bravery and, well, spirited creativity. As you get comfy, you may want to brace yourself for an 18th century version of a team-building exercise, where the trust fall involves you falling into a barrel of vodka instead of a trusty comrade. Congratulations, you've just woken up in 1750 Russia, and the only thing stiffer than the freezing air is the camaraderie among these vodka-loving soldiers. You can practically hear the boots squelching in the mud as they trudge along, each step accompanied by the sweet symphony of sloshing spirits. Now, let's paint a picture. The sun is struggling to shine through dark gray clouds, not unlike your mood on a Monday morning. The landscape is a muddied canvas decorated with the indelible marks of worn-out boots and the despair of long-lost Turkish cucumber pickles, which, let's be honest, are only being brought up for therapeutic reasons. The scent? All at once confusing, a delightful mix of wet earth, potential moldering cabbage, and the promise of joy lurking just beneath a generous splash of vodka. As you trudge along with this least graceful army the world has ever known, you might spy your comrades taking a break. The soldiers are lifting tankards as if they're weighing the world on their shoulders. But really, they're just arguing about the best ways to drink vodka responsibly, irresponsibly, or if they should just switch to drinking liquid bread salads, i.e. kvass. Let's not forget, onlookers witnessing this spectacle could only chuckle. Here were men, stalwart soldiers brandishing muskets and dreams, engaging in a fierce debate as if they were at a local pub, rather than perilously marching toward a battle. Picture a soldier shouting, "I say we fight first and drink later," only to be drowned out by a chorus of, "Later? What's your version of later? The next full moon?" As the army lurches forward, it's not just the mud that's difficult to navigate. It's also those staggering amounts of vodka that somehow make everyone feel like they can defy both gravity and common sense. In fact, it's estimated that by the late 19th century, alcohol taxes accounted for nearly a third of the Russian Empire's revenue. That's a tax plan no one expected, and you'd never get away with that kind of initiative today unless it involved a certain spirit in a bottle being labeled medicinal. Let's pause for a moment to reflect on the great importance of this liquid asset. It's threading itself into politics so gracefully, you'd think it was auditioning for a lead role in a dramatic play about survival in questionable times. This just in, teetotaler czar reclaims prosperity with a 50% cut on potato taxes and a reminder that proper hydration happens with a side of vodka. And no one can forget the chefs working tirelessly behind the scenes, attempting to prepare feasts fit for a grand czar, only to be met with a pantry full of ne'er-do-well ingredients. Pickled this, sour that, and the occasional skinned creature resembling yesterday's dinner. Imagine the culinary horror show, where the menu reads like a blindfold test of guess the food based on vague potato-based recipes. Amidst it all, the drums beat in rhythm with everyone's despair, the muddy silhouettes of soldiers creating a backdrop that rivals even the most troubled of Russian ballet performances. Swaying in unison, this not-so-mighty army continues pushing through the muck and mire, fueled by fermented hopes and muddied dreams. By now, you might think this army should have just started a dance party. They'd seem like the only ones wearing optimism payments in the form of well-placed foot judgment. You can almost see them now, standing proud, majestic, and intensely wobbling about just like a troop of staggering gelatinous structures, boisterously roaring to life with songs about vodka while battling the very essence of gravity itself. That's right, comrades. In Russia, as the old saying goes, sometimes the only way forward is through another pint of liquid courage. Amazes this mildly amusing exodus unfolds, one thing becomes incredibly clear. An army can only march on its stomach, and preferably on a bit of vodka-infused bravery. So hold on tight. This journey isn't over yet.
Chapter 10. The Toast of Three Occasions.
Hey guys, tonight we're going to take a charmingly absurd stroll through the rich tapestry of Russian history, where every significant life moment comes complete with a bottle of vodka and an obligatory toast. Picture it now, a joyous wedding feast, a somber funeral gathering, and the most serious of business transactions, all revolving around that ever-so-reliable companion, our friend, vodka. But first, let's take a moment to set the scene. Have you ever been to a wedding and noticed how that one uncle, or was it cousin, tends to get a little, shall we say, overly festive? Or have you been at a funeral where someone attempts to lighten the mood with a poorly timed joke about the deceased's taste in music? Have you found yourself in a business meeting so full of tension you'd think it was a standoff at high noon, only to have it dissolve into laughter, maybe thanks to a vodka toast that was definitely not in the agenda? All right, let's get comfortable and transport ourselves back to mid-18th century Russia, a time when vodka was more than just a drink. It was practically the state beverage. Imagine you've just woken up amidst the buzzing laughter of a wedding feast, somewhere around the year 1750, your head still spinning a bit from the previous night's revelry. As golden sunlight streams through the windows of a wooden lodge decorated with wildflowers, you can hear the clanking of tankards and the joyous singing that would make any modern karaoke enthusiast blush. Now, the wedding feast is a sight to behold. There's more food than any reasonable person can eat, a cornucopia that would rival a Thanksgiving dinner on steroids. You've got roasted meats, pies filled with things that might resemble chicken, and a barrel or two of vodka that seems to be flowing like a river of happiness. A chorus of voices lifts a toast, glasses clinking like a symphony orchestra that graduated from a bard school specializing in drunken ballads. May your lives be longer than the line at the deli on a Saturday morning, they shout, and everyone is laughing like the kind of laughter that sings of both love and drunkenness. It's a moment so picturesque it could be painted, despite the fact that the bride still looks a bit bewildered, possibly contemplating whether her new husband can actually hold his liquor more elegantly than he can hold a dance step. As celebrations proceed and the vodka flows, let's think about how this toast signifies commitment. But let's also pause for a moment to ponder. Was there ever a wedding in history where someone didn't get a little too emotional and accidentally toast to the wrong person? To my ex-wife, may she forever haunt my memories and my next relationship. Now, let's whisk away from jubilant celebrations to a very different occasion, a funeral gathering. The vibes are, shall we say, drastically quieter. You're surrounded by mourners, dressed in somber black, their faces reflecting a spectrum of emotions as they clutch their glasses, though for a different reason this time. In the dim light, there's the awkward shuffle of feet, the muffled sobs, and then, oh no, someone in the corner decides to lift a glass for a toast, as if they were at a tavern instead of a wake. To Sergei, his jokes were worse than this toast. It's a clapback that sends a few mourners into quiet snickers, replacing sorrow with shared memories that are more akin to a sitcom than a tragedy. It's not quite the best time for humor, but there you are, standing amongst the complexities of life and death, where vodka becomes a bridge, a common ground to ease the heaviness in the air. Feelings fluctuate, a laugh here, a tear there. It's like being at a family reunion gone awry, where you remember just enough about the dearly departed to raise your glass in heartfelt vodka solidarity that deep down we all shared a bit of chaos. But don't pack up that vodka just yet, because we have one more moment to toast. A good old-fashioned business deal, where two men shaking hands over a contract makes you question if they have a special affection for the distilled spirits that linger nearby. Picture this: two illustrious gentlemen, wearing bejeweled waistcoats and quite possibly terrible hair, meticulously plotting their next investment over a bottle of vodka. The air is thick with the whiff of desperation and opportunity as they eagerly sip from their glasses. To a future where our profits are larger than our waistlines, one declares, as laughter erupts around the table like an unwelcome sneeze at a wedding. Here's the real kicker. There's often that one person who interjects unexpectedly with earnest words of wisdom. Something like, "A toast. Here's to growing old enough to know vodka is not a meal replacement." Yet everyone continues clinking glasses, because in business, you always seal a deal with a drink, not a handshake. Who needs good faith when you've got vodka's inspiring clarity? It's like liquid optimism, even when your business plan resembles something drawn by a toddler on a sugar high. As life unfolds, every occasion finds its way back to that same bottle, sharing laughter during joy, bittersweet memories during sorrow, and unexpected agreements during business. You might say vodka is the unsung hero of Russian history, operating as a social glue that held together the beautiful chaos of life during the 18th century. So take a sip and remember, in the wild world of Russian toasts, everything and everyone is just one hearty swallow away from a good laugh, or maybe just a really interesting story. Chapter 11. The clink that ruled an empire. Ah, the subtle art of toasting, where you raise a glass in the name of good cheer, even if your neighbors are 6 sheets to the wind and reciting poetry that smells of cabbage. Picture yourself in mid-18th century Russia, where a hearty clink of glasses is the only thing keeping the empire from crumbling faster than an overcooked blini. But here's the kicker. Toasting, especially the obligatory nazdovia, or to your health, is not just a mild suggestion. It's practically a governmental mandate, burned into the societal fabric like vodka on a Friday night. You've just settled into a cozy wooden lodge surrounded by jovial folks who've mistaken rustic charm for, let's see how much vodka we can drink before someone passes out. The scent of home-cooked meat lingers in the air, mingling harmoniously with the overwhelming presence of distilled spirits. Feeling hungry? You might find a roast that's been lovingly ignored until it grows a pleasant crust. Most likely, it's talking back to the chefs at this point. So, what's the official reason for all this vodka, you might wonder? It's simple, really. Even the state figured out the genius in distillation ages ago. It was like discovering that hot glue can fix anything, but instead of crafts, it fueled an empire. In fact, vodka taxes accounted for a whopping third of state revenue by the 19th century. Yes, you heard that right. While modern-day governments fuss over sales tax and income tax, Russia looked at a bottle and said, "Now this is a reliable source of income." Who needs Wall Street when you've got Vodka Street? Let's take a deep dive into the world of toasting rituals, shall we? Imagine 2 rugged gentlemen, their cheeks slightly flushed, not necessarily from the vodka, but from the burning questions that loom large. What if I forget the toast? What if I spill my drink on the Tsar? The pressure mounts, until one of them, with a glass raised high and a little too much fervor, shouts, "Nazdovia!" It's like a secret handshake, but with alcohol. And let's face it, if you can't toast, you might as well just sit on the sidelines and knit. Now, close your eyes and envision the scene. 3 men are gathered around a table, exchanging ideas. And by ideas, I mean complaints about their collective lack of decent footwear. "To your health!" shouts one, downing a glass of vodka like he just finished a grueling marathon. I was just thinking, what if we used these to fund a pair of decent shoes? Or maybe some nuts for the inevitable hangover? This is how logic works when it's been marinated in alcohol for a few hours. And is there anything more reassuring than the absurd certainty that at the heart of every decision, whether it be political or personal, lies a bottle of vodka? If toasts could be measured in volume and substance, imagine the symphony of clinking and cheers, echoing through the room, creating a raucous harmony, akin to a beginner's orchestra tuning for the first time. The sound is as vibrant as a burst of fireworks, with the occasional hiccup and misplaced grunt as an unscripted crescendo. Each toast feels like its own mini-event, punctuated by belly laughs, subsequent toasts, and people attempting to dance while still grappling with the fine nuances of what constitutes vodka etiquette. Picture yourself entering any gathering, be it a wedding or simply a Tuesday, and meeting your new friend named Dmitri. You exchange pleasantries, and almost immediately he confides in you about his regrettably awkward encounters with domesticated bears, but we'll circle back to that later. For now, he looks you right in the eye and declares, "To your health," and without skipping a beat, tips back an entire glass with the enthusiasm reserved for a toddler on their birthday. Drunk on vodka, so to speak, you begin to wonder about the correlating powers held in such liquid courage. Consider this. Russians consumed vodka with the fervor of a kid facing a plate of freshly baked cookies, and everyone ceremoniously clinked glasses, right before Paul from accounting inevitably knocked over a table. Just imagine the pride in raising a glass in the land where state vodka distillation was practically an Olympic sport. Your mind races. Would you dare to rise to the occasion? But alas, this endless cycle of toasting does have its downsides. It's one thing to drink to everyone's health, yet quite another to be the unwitting star performer of the evening, the human jukebox everyone hails while you frantically try to recall the plot of War and Peace, whilst 4 shots deep. As the night wears on like a particularly stubborn coat that just won't come off, you experience the bittersweet moment when the room begins to tilt slightly, a gentle reminder that perhaps vodka is not, in fact, a solid foundation for your long-term decisions. Yet you sip on, committing every clink to memory as if it were a historical footnote in the annals of undisturbed chaos. So raise your glass, toast to the absurdity, and let out a hearty Nazdovya, because in mid-18th century Russia, every occasion, regardless of how dramatic, was better resolved with a drink, a laugh, and enough good cheer to drown an elephant. Now that's what I call a history lesson that tastes great and feels even better, perhaps a little too passionately, and with a side of regret. But hey, that's history for you. Chapter 12. The Wobbly General and His Diplomatic Imbalance. Ah yes, welcome back to the raucous ballet of 19th century Russia, where the proud men wore their decorations like a peacock flaunting its feathers, only to discover that their ability to hold liquor was just as important as donning those shiny medals. Picture a highly decorated Russian general, plump, slightly unsteady, and standing tall like a towering birch tree about to topple in a windstorm. His face bears the telltale flush of vodka consumption, while in the background, a serious-faced European diplomat watches with the gravitas of a cat observing a goldfish. Consider for a moment that our esteemed general isn't just swaying because of an overindulgence in vodka. No, that would be far too simple. He's actually deep in the throes of a very committed relationship with good old distilled grains. This great man, decked out in a uniform that could probably double as a festive tablecloth, is the embodiment of 19th century Russian spirit, or perhaps more accurately, spirits. You might wonder, why was vodka such a pivotal part of Russian life? It's a fair question. Imagine a world where the local economy thrived as much on taxes from vodka as modern-day folks do on avocado toast. A shocking financial model, no doubt, but one that yielded plenty of hangovers. By this point in history, alcohol taxes accounted for nearly a third of state revenue, so raising a glass wasn't just recreational. It was practically a
patriotic duty. The Tsar probably raised his glass and said something like, "To vodka, the real backbone of our empire." Now, you might think of politicians today and their complex tax codes, but Russian officials in the 19th century had this charm for keeping it simple. If the people want to drink, let's make sure they pay for it. Some say that taxes on vodka were so high that if you were lucky enough to enjoy a sip, you could almost hear the sound of rubles going tink into the state treasury with each swallow. Ah, the sweet symphony of commerce, fueled by merriment and drunken brawls. Let's pause here for a moment. Picture this: the general, reflecting on his inevitable march toward diplomatic grandeur, accidentally leans against a nearby wall. The wall wobbles as if in sympathy to his unsteady stance, and you can almost hear the hallowed echoes of history murmuring, "Not again." Yes, indeed. In such settings, it wouldn't be unusual for a less than agile general to inadvertently start a small-scale diplomatic incident just by attempting to toast the virtues of sobriety, an ironic concept in this tale of generous pours. Ah, those toasts. They'd begin like a Shakespearean drama filled with promise and optimism. "To friendship," followed quickly by the less noble, "to not spilling on the diplomats." The general, having clinked glasses with questionable steadiness, would wobble enthusiastically, securing his reputation.
Confirmation of his capability to balance two drinks, a shot in one hand, a toast in the other, became a matter of national pride, his wobbling legs performing a dance known as noble diplomacy. And let's not forget the serious-faced diplomat with his impeccably polished shoes, standing starkly against the swirling chaos of vodka-fueled revelry. Picture him thinking, "If I have to judge one more toast while standing next to this teetering figure, I might just faint." Occasionally, he'd find himself swept up in a tide of drunken proclamations, where each slurred word shot out like fireworks, strikingly colorful, confusing, and a touch precarious. Imagine a feast where beets and bread tumble alongside potato dishes that could make a Rasputin-sized lad finish fast. As you settle deeper into this delightful portrait of historical absurdity, don't you just love how life was all about food and booze thrills? It's like they had an innate understanding of the ultimate dinner party. Feed them well, and they'll drink till they forget who they were today and who's standing behind them. As the evening dwindles, you can almost see our general's face begin to morph into a portrait of bewilderment, confusion, and sheer ambition, his aspirations diminishing slightly with each nudge from the vodka bottle. Noticing he may have mentioned world conquest slightly prematurely, he opts instead to stick to safer topics, like the quality of cabbage. Let's revisit the difficulties faced. Imagine being responsible for such grand party gameplay while just trying not to fall over.
The general may very well have stumbled into an unintended rhyme, fumbling through complex ideas, and possibly losing his place in his own speech. Imagine the packed room suddenly witnessing the grandiosity of the Russian vodka speeches morphing into an impromptu karaoke night, or rather a vodka karaoke night, where a few discordant notes and spilled drinks begin the cycle again. And just as the serious diplomat raises an eyebrow, a gust of wind knocks over a chandelier, sending it swaying dangerously, a fitting metaphor for the impending doom of empires built on liquor and loud laughter. And there you have it, a night of history where dignity and drunkenness hike hand in hand, deciding that if you have the right general, even the ultimate fall from grace could result in an amusing tale worth repeating until dawn. Ah, the comical gravity of it all. Raise your glass, but not too high, for in Russia, toasting wasn't an art, it was a full contact sport, one where laughter echoed just as loudly as the inevitable thud of a nobleman taking an unintended nap right under the dinner table.
Chapter 13. The Holy Spirit of Vodka Fundraising. Hey guys, gather round as we dip our toes into a subject more fiendishly delicious than the neighbor's gossip, and that's saying something. Tonight, we plunge into the sacred ambience of an Orthodox church, where holy men don't just pray. They taste test spirits stronger than your Aunt Mabel after Thanksgiving dinner. Yes, you heard it right. Imagine a gilded sanctuary infused with the scent of incense and possibly a bit of unholy vodka vapors wafting in from a back room, all while a group of priests congregates around a very special bottle. Now, speaking of bottles, ever wondered what it'd be like to fundraise your way into the 18th century? Forget bake sales. We're talking about priests pouring shots to fix leaky roofs. If that doesn't make you reflect on your own methods of fundraising, perhaps a car wash if you're lucky, then not much will. Think about it. What if your neighborhood bake sales were replaced with surprisingly effective vodka tastings? Oh, Mrs. Johnson, I see you've brought your delightful whiskey scones and a few gleaming bottles of clear spirit. How delightful. So, let's get comfortable, shall we? Dim the lights, put on a fan, no one wants to sweat over historical puns, and settle in for this blend of divine humor and alcoholic revelry. Imagine, if you will, the questions swirling in your mind. What on earth would you even wear to an ecclesiastical vodka fundraiser? A cassock, or something more suited for the Sunday barbecue? It's hard to know whether you should bring your wine glasses or a soul-stirring hymn. Congratulations! You've just woken up in the affluent world of the 1750s Russian Empire, where the vodka flows like water, and every roof could use a little divine intervention to keep from collapsing. You open your eyes to the sight of finely framed frescoes and the aroma of musty wood mingling with something distinctly sharper. Could that be the smell of vodka? Look around and spot the priests. They're huddled in a back room, their solemn faces a curious blend of focus and festivity, gathered around an illustriously clear bottle of spirit, like it's the last slice of pizza at a party. Let's take a moment to absorb the scene. The church's interior gleams with gilded icons, perhaps too bright for the hangover you're already contemplating. Envision the priests swaying slightly, each holding their own chalice, engaging in a low murmur of rabid joy and clandestine pooling of wisdom. A holy council fueled by a seemingly sacred liquor. It's enough to make even the hardiest of saints raise an eyebrow or two. Oh, is that Father Ivan sampling the Holy Spirit again? Someone call Benedict. He's going to need a strong dose of prayer and some ice. You might find it curious as to how the Russian state funded its very roof repair projects, considering roofs often served as the holy umbrella over crazy drunken antics. How did they go from veneration and reverence to lively spirit sampling? Think of it like a kumbaya moment that accidentally turned into a frenzy of elaborate rituals involving vodka bottles and a couple of blurry halos. In fact, by this time, state control over alcohol distillation had turned into a well-oiled machine of no small consequence. It's almost like they discovered the formula of turning grain into cash, a concept modern entrepreneurs spend years refining. Grain, intoxication, profit, a mantra for the ages. Ever thought about what Russian officials in the 18th century might have said in meetings? Gentlemen, if we tax vodka and also run a church renovation campaign, we might solve two problems with one bottle. Assume for a moment the monks aren't just sampling vodka for religious purposes. Oh no, they're diligent donors as well. Picture them attempting to maintain decorum while also facilitating the smooth swigging that helps support the church. This roof won't fix itself, brothers. On the count of 3, let's raise our glasses and, dare I say, barter for fewer leaks. And then, sure enough, one particularly ambitious priest stands a bit too upright, attempting to out-toast the last "to the strength of faith" with a "to the strength of spirits." It's a momentary lapse in piety that has spectators chuckling and others praying harder than ever. You can see them debating if perhaps their divine mission had transformed into a hideous game of folly. Does one laugh in the face of vodka-fueled donations? Meanwhile, the essence of the endearing chaos in the back room radiates warmth. The priests argue over the quality of the vodka, mirroring discussions we might have over artisanal coffee or craft beer today. Are we sure this wasn't distilled from last week's sermon? One may suggest, prompting laughter, awkward shrugs, and more shots. In that somewhat solemn moment, just imagine how, if your average 18th century priest were around today, they'd be the ultimate barista vodka connoisseur, sniffing whiskey in one hand while juggling chalices with the other. Each sip becomes a sacred pledge toward repairing something that probably needs to be fixed far more than their minds ever could. And those fast-moving conversations fly through the room, a blur of animated, holy drunkenness that somehow feels both relevant and timeless. One might state, every drink brings us closer to a glorious ceiling, while another retorts, or the ground. Finally, as the priests reach a consensus, they resolve to summon even more vodka, the divine solution to all roof-related woes. Ah, the absurdity. In this vivid mosaic, where the church becomes a fundraising haven, you can't help but laugh at the irony of divine intervention served neat. One might say this is the essence of Russia, where even a priest's contemplation over salvation could be easily mixed with the spirit of vodka. Can you imagine? Their late-night brainstorming sessions that mingled reverence with revelry. it leads to only one outcome: a roof repaired while slightly tipsy, and a tale worth telling for generations. So there you have it. Welcome to a spirit-fueled historical rendezvous set against the backdrop of a noble and, let's face it, hilariously misguided fundraising effort. Because after all, history was never about dry facts. It was about the merry chaos that evolves in the divine dance of life, and vodka must surely be its soundtrack. Chapter 14, The Kabak Chronicles, A Hazy Reverie. Hey there, history adventurers. Gather round as we take a slight detour into a world bustling with life, laughter, and perhaps just a tad too much libation. Picture this, a dimly lit kabak in 1750s Russia, where smoky air swirls around rough wooden benches that could tell more tales than your best friend at a pub. Do they have tales of drunken brawls, raucous laughter, and arguments over the quality of the last bottle that would make your Aunt Edna blush with envy? Well, more or less. Now, let's set the mood. Dim the lights, may your fan breathe a gentle breeze, and prepare to melt into a world where the vodka flows like mystical rivers of potato magic, and the general absurdity of life is topped off with a shot of humor. But let's ask ourselves, what kind of citizens of the Russian Empire navigate the smoky labyrinth of a kabak? Do they barter for their next drink like someone haggling over the price of a slightly singed potato? Imagine the conversations. Is that the finest vodka, or merely a liquid rendition of last year's cabbage? Congratulations. You've just woken up in the heart of the Russian Empire, surrounded by the joyful chaos of a kabak buzzing with life, where the single dirt-stained window struggles valiantly to let a feeble shaft of light pierce the cloud of smoke. Welcome. You can almost taste the camaraderie swirling around you, shrouded in whiskey-infused banter that feels more like a spirited wrestling match between friends than a mere gathering. Now, observe your surroundings. The rhythmic clink of glasses provides a sort of drunken orchestra, while patrons shout and laugh, their voices melding into a raucous symphony, reminiscent of a catfight in a bagpipe factory. Each patron, a character in this living, breathing play, is as unique as a snowflake, yet somehow all of them smell faintly of fermented grain and regret. Let's meander deeper into this den of merriment. You spot Ivan, the burly fellow with a monotone laugh that echoes through the rafters. He's passionately debating with Alexei about the difference between vodka and water, as if the fate of the empire depends on whether they allow a splash of vodka to blend into their glasses. You see, it's like water, but with zest, and possibly a few more regrets, Ivan insists. You can't help but think, is he perhaps an accidental philosopher who just really, really loves his vodka? Ah, the benches, roughly hewn from wood that looks suspiciously as if it were repurposed from a nearby shipwreck. They creak and moan under the weight of patrons who've long since given up on the art of moderation. Do they think they're transforming into cushions by the sheer force of their weight? Perhaps. You can practically see them growing roots into the benches. If you squint hard enough, you might imagine a small Douglas fir sprouting between Vanya's legs as he winces at the realization he's forgotten his own name in pursuit of the last shot. The smoky air carries a peculiar aroma. Think burnt toast mixed with that strange scent of hope that isn't quite as potent as vodka. but lingering enough to remind you of last weekend's escapades. You breathe it all in, and for a fleeting moment, it feels like a warm hug from your weird uncle. Every once in a while, a lively argument breaks out about who among them can throw the most impressive shot. "My aim is sharper than your stubbornness, comrade," someone proclaims, raising a glass as if it were a trophy of dignity. And just like that, the disputes unfold over who can drink more without passing out. An impressive yet terrifying skill that seems to unite these patrons more than statehood ever could. Modern-day team-building exercises could take a note or two from this golden era, where solidarity is achieved not through trust falls, but through the descent into the glorious embrace of vodka. Let's not neglect the entertainment. A raspy-voiced musician strums a balalaika in a corner, his fingers moving with the practiced agility of someone with a permanent buzz. The notes swirl around like confetti at a bizarre, tipsy birthday party. All eyes turn to him, and with eager anticipation, one can sense collective joy, a moment that feels almost sacred. How many modern-day events could stand to benefit from the gentle strumming of a balalaika under swirling clouds of vague, drunken nostalgia? Surely more than one. And among the chorus of mischief, you catch a glimpse of mats strewn carelessly across the floor, serving as primitive makeshift carpets, hinting at the many spillage events that have transpired. Maybe a wild dance or two, or simply a wallet-easing trip to the nearest outhouse. Nothing like a chaotic kabak after-party to remind you that restroom visits were already awkward decades prior. Ever tried to navigate a mud-strewn outdoor pit after a few too many? Let's just say the walls of camaraderie may not be worth your pride. As laughter ricochets off the walls like wild horses on an open field, you discover the absurdity within this enchanting chaos. Men and women united under the vodka banner, their troubles momentarily drowned in the sea of distilled relief. Somehow, it feels entirely fitting that life's real mysteries are often locked behind the twist of a cap. Because forget leveling up in video games, when your companionship arrives at the bottom of a shot glass, you've officially entered a realm not just of intoxication, but of a shared experience that births even more absurdity. So, sit back, my friends, as we navigate further into this vodka-fueled wonderland, where each sip tells a tale richer than the last, and laughter dances on the edge of tipsy lips. The night is young, the drinks are plentiful, and one can only wonder if a sip of vodka might just solve more issues than you were aware of. After all, in this kabak, history never felt so alive. Or so. Delightfully absurd. Chapter 15. The Tavern Keeper's Secrets. A Tipple of Truth. Hey guys, gather round, and let's embark on a journey more intriguing than a cheese board at a family reunion. Tonight, we find ourselves in a scene darker than your favorite coffee shop at 6 p.m. on a Thursday. Our tale drips with a distilled allure, swirled in the hazy corners of a 1750s Russian tavern, lovingly known as a kabak. Here, amidst the clinking of glasses and the whispers of bold wagers over who can outlast whom in a drinking duel, lies a purveyor of liquid magic, the stern, knowing-faced tavern keeper, who might just be the world's least appreciated therapist.
But wait, before we dive into a storyline thicker than a Glaswegian accent, if you're feeling stimulated beyond the realm of reality, consider liking, subscribing, and perhaps commenting below. Only if you truly enjoy this gentle spiraling descent into culinary history, of course. You know, spare the thumbs up for those moments that truly tickle your fancy. If you're anything like that half-knocked-over barrel in the corner, I get it. Now, dim the lights, turn on your fan, or imagine a gentle breeze. We can't all afford air conditioning. And sink into your plush chair as if it, too, had just downed a hearty shot of vodka. Feel those lazy eyelids flutter as together we contemplate a crucial question. What secrets does our tavern keeper hold, ensconced behind a sagging counter? Does he hear tales as rich as the vodka itself? Or are his only companions a series of grumpy patrons debating the superior brand of potato juice? And let's not forget, if the drinks could talk, would they recount the confessions of drunken souls like an over-caffeinated diary? Could the spirits whisper insights more intriguing than your uncle's conspiracy theories over Thanksgiving dinner? Imagine their words weaving a tapestry of political plots and somber taxes, a world where the tavern is an information hub, just like social media, but with more potatoes and considerably less status updates. Congratulations! You've just woken up in 1750, standing amidst a raucous cabak, where whiskey-infused banter mingles with the musk of poorly ventilated air, a concoction potent enough to raise even the most dormant spirits. This tavern is nothing short of a raucous amphitheater, alive with stories of whirling banter, and cries over who dropped the last shot of vodka like it was a precious heirloom. As you acclimate to the warm baronial hum of the tavern, your eyes land on a stout tavern keeper, let's call him Ivanovich, with a face etched by years of listening to boisterous tales and wisecracking patrons. He stands behind a counter that saggingly groans under the weight of too many tankards, and a history that could rival a Shakespearean tragedy. Every time he pours a drink, it's almost a sacred ritual, an alchemical transformation of tubers turned liquid gold. But Ivanovich serves his spirits with more than just
liquor. He dives deep into the whispers swirling around him, rumors of taxes that could outdo the weight of a sack of potatoes, and politics that could make even the most apathetic nod in grave contemplation. Let's take a moment to consider what it must be like to be behind that counter. You know, it's like you're the sole translator in a room of tipsy diplomats arguing over who gets the last slice of cake. Are your ears ringing with confessions, or do you just catch snippets? An increase in tax? Has the Tsar lost his marbles? Murmurs a nearby patron, raising a tankard as if in solemn salute to terrible economic policies. As Ivanovich realizes he's more than a bartender, he's a kind of therapist. One can't help but wonder, are the patrons coming for the vodka, or are they really just seeking solace in a glass? A warm hug in liquid form, sort of like that comforting conversation with your fridge at 2 a.m. when you're wondering if life has any meaning beyond leftover pizza. As the evening progresses, his patrons become unruly, like a string of fruit flies mistaking the yeast for a rave. "I tell you, Alexei," a fellow exclaims suddenly, "vodka taxes are as inevitable as the sun rising. It's like they say, you can't outrun your hangover." That's the kicker, isn't it? Alcohol taxes in Russia once amounted to nearly a third of the state's revenue. It's equal parts absurd and dreadful, like being told your pet goldfish is suddenly fundraising for charity. The sheer disconnect is comical. You might even think, maybe I'll start my own vodka empire. Just imagine, vodka-flavored ice cream, a world where our desserts can be our drinks, and nobody blinks an eye. And while laughter echoes around, Ivanovich quietly observes, his keen eyes catching every bit of confidential information shared over the clink of glasses. Historians might remark he's just a loud, glorified bartender. Yet, in reality, he's the most powerful information broker in town. It's like watching the preamble of a reality show unfold, where the drama swirls around like maybe a slightly flatter version of Real Housewives of Moscow. Finally, as the night draws on and the drunken slurs transform into heartfelt confessions, people confessing their undying love for their local potato farms, Ivanovich seems more like a sage oracle than a tavern keeper. He scans the room, occasionally shaking his head with a mixture of amusement and weariness. One can almost hear him sighing, "It's always the vodka, never the politics. That's always been the way of it." So next time you think of a tavern, remember, behind every pour is not just a drink, but a story. You might find your own life lessons in the absurdities of Russian vodka culture. After all, the world's marinated in whimsy, if you just know where to look. As you drift deeper into your dreams, let that knowledge linger, the kind of absurdity that could charm a grumpy cat and keep your chuckling till morning. Till Chapter 16. The Watchful Eyes of Ivan the Subtle. Hey guys, gather round because tonight we're taking a delightful trip into a corner of 1750s Russia so shadowy it makes your last visit to the dentist seem like a sun-soaked beach vacation. Picture this, a tavern, warmer than your grandma's hugs, yet colder than her last Christmas gift, perfectly tinged with that musty aroma of spilled vodka and reckless ambition. Here lies our hero, a man with peasant threads, yet eyes sharper than a freshly honed scythe. Now imagine this. If you could peek into his mind, what would you see? Perhaps thoughts of potato pancakes paired with existential dread? Or maybe debates about whether his neighbor's goat would ever learn to stop eating his laundry. Ah, the mysteries of life are as rich as the vodka served in these dimly lit corners. Before we jump headfirst into this historical rabbit hole, a gentle reminder. If you enjoy this calming journey through slightly tipsy history, consider giving us a thumbs up, subscribing, and sharing your own quirky historical thoughts down below. But only if you genuinely enjoy it. No pressure, unless you count the weight of those ancient vodka barrels. So, dim the lights, turn on that fan like it's a personal cloud of coolness, and snuggle up as if you were a potato in a cozy sack. Ever wondered what it must be like to overhear rebellious whispers while clutching a tankard of liquid courage? Ever felt eager to wheel your thoughts away from taxes, political strife, and the ominous threat of a hangover looming larger than life? Congratulations! You've just emerged from the mists of time, standing amidst a bustling kabak where every shout, every clink of glass feels like a soft lullaby sung by drunken angels. The crease of worry on your forehead fades away, making room for curiosity as you glide through the raucous crowd. The air is thick with laughter
laced with the scent of more potato-based dishes than you could possibly dream of. As you settle in, you catch a glimpse of our protagonist. Let's call him Ivan, a man not only dedicating his life to crafting the smoothest vodka this side of the Nieva, but also doubling as a discreet observer of human folly. He stands tucked away like a bemused cat watching its owners argue about what constitutes dinner. Armed with nothing but a tankard and a keen ear, he listens, soaking in the secrets of these merry patrons as they discuss the latest vodka taxes with the fervor of knights planning their next tournament. You'd think that Ivan, with his bulging eyes and blanket of wisdom draped like a heavy cloak, would join in on the drunken debates. But no. He absorbs their musings like a sponge drunk on stories rather than spirits. And as he leans closer, it becomes evident that every patron here is an unwitting reservoir of potential rebellion. Because, apparently, nothing sparks revolution quite like bad vodka taxation. Let's pause a moment to appreciate
The absurdity of it all. Here's Ivan, standing in a corner like an ancient oracle, but instead of foretasting prophecies, he witnesses men building elaborate theories of revolution like children constructing sandcastles on a tumultuous beach. "Increased taxes?" exclaims a portly man with a beard that could house a family of sparrows. "Why, the Tsar must be on a bender himself, plotting my inevitable downfall, or at least my next hangover." It's like watching a game of Monopoly, but the stakes involve more than paper money. They're talking about their livelihoods. The laughter curls through the smoky air, twisting into a dance of shared misfortune and euphoric denial. You almost feel tempted to join the discourse yourself. After all, who doesn't have an opinion about taxes that make your skin crawl and your wallet lighter? Here, amid rambunctious boisterousness, lies a critical truth. The more vodka flowed, the more absurdly vivid their reasoning became. It's as if the liquor dissolved their inhibitions and led their minds through a maze of logic so skewed anyone would suspect an alternate universe. "Oh, sure," Ivan chuckles to himself, "a vodka-flavored island paradise for all, because that's not a bad idea at all." But lurking beneath the surface of their silly banter is a somber reality. Vodka taxes once accounted for nearly a third of the state's revenue. Cue the dramatic sigh. Similar to insisting you could survive solely on a diet of caffeinated energy drinks because they're basically liquid bread, these men cling to their glasses like life rafts, fearing the inevitable repercussions of getting too sober and too serious. You see, while they sip and spit out their bold plans for sweet rebellion, Ivan's role as the silent observer morphs into something akin to a blog curator, diligently collecting anecdotes to amuse future generations, or at least to pass the time on long winter evenings. After all, he's the guy sitting behind the curtain, pondering which story will win over the hearts of future tavern-goers, as if he's crafting the next great Russian novel. As raucous tales spill, the tension shifts from camaraderie to a spectator sport, with Ivan as the unwitting referee of drunken empathy and potential mutiny. Is it worse, he thinks, to pay taxes or to face your hangover without a friend to blame? Questions spiral like the dancing smoke overhead, a mix of laughter, despair, and perhaps a tinge of hope. So here you are, a silent witness to the symphony of human absurdity, where the tavern becomes a battleground of ideas, a stage for the most ridiculous performances of stubbornness you could ever hope to see. With every clink of the tankard, every slurred argument, you realize that somewhere within these blurred boundaries of vodka-laden conversation lies the very essence of life itself: laughter, frustration, and a deep-seated need to commiserate over the awkward reality of
Existence.
As you lay back, let these thoughts take root in your mind. Reimagine that shadowy corner of the tavern every time you think of taxes, human folly, or the sheer dedication of men bent on drinking away their sorrows. There's humor buried deep in the most absurd tales of history, waiting just for you, exactly as it did for Ivan and his merry band of patrons. Chapter 17. Vodka's Frosty Embrace. Hey guys, welcome back to the cozy corner of your favorite mildly interesting history channel. Tonight, we're diving into something bumpier than your last road trip to visit relatives: the frozen landscape of 1750s Russia, a place where a drop of vodka could make you feel warmer than your last 3 relationships combined. Imagine stepping outside in the depths of winter and having icicles form on your nose faster than you can say, "vodka-induced warmth." Now, what do you think would be the highlight of a peasant's day? In modern times, we'd nervously check our phones for emails and silently judge our choices while sipping overpriced coffee. These guys? They were far more concerned with whether their daily vodka consumption could double as a main course. Here's a thought. Ever wondered how many potatoes you'd need to consume to feel justified in drinking vodka straight from a communal jug? Or if you'd be able to hold a conversation about the weather while also plotting your neighbor's downfall like an episode of a particularly raucous soap opera. Spoiler alert, vodka would likely feature prominently in both plans. Congratulations, you've just woken up in the frost-bitten heart of Russia, where life is bleak and joy is neatly encased in a glass of vodka. Tucked beneath layers of wool, your senses are awakened by the bitter cold that nips at your fingertips like a disgruntled squirrel. The walls of your humble abode are more thatch than structure, with enough drafts to audition for a horror movie. And what's that smell? Ah, yes, the unmistakable scent of desperation mixed with that lingering aroma from yesterday's borscht. Let's talk about food, shall we? Breakfast for our plucky protagonist, let's call him Boris, might consist of yesterday's cabbage soup and the dreams of a better tomorrow. But what's this? A steaming cup of vodka sits beside it like a welcoming friend. You take a moment to appreciate how utterly bizarre it is that the centerpiece of breakfast is essentially the spirit of rebellion to ward off your bitter circumstances. As you take that first swallow, you can't help but feel a magnificent rush, like your taste buds have suddenly made international friends in an underground party. Ah, but beware. Each drop of vodka is a double-edged sword, armed with the potential to ease your pains while simultaneously transforming your evening into a debate over whether a chicken could outrun a husky. Because, let's face it, after the 4th cup, anything becomes an existential question. But hey, that's just vodka speaking. Fast forward to the fields of frost,
where our noble Boris toils, his calloused hands raising another cup, the liquid delight flickering in the pale light of day like a beacon of sanity amidst a sea of potatoes and dreams deferred. The bleak landscape stretches endlessly, a monotonous canvas of white, ethereal, yet haunting. One would almost
Think that Mother Nature went a bit overboard with her color palette on this one. It's enough to make you wonder if you were actually living inside a giant snow globe that some toddler in a distant kingdom kept shaking with absolute glee. Now, frozen peasants and vodka consumption might seem like mere side notes, but believe me, they were the linchpins of a culture that relied as much on spirit, and I don't mean the ghostly kind, as on sheer determination. So how did vodka come to step into the limelight like a beautifully twisted hero in an epic opera? Enter the state's marvelous and magnificent operation: taxes. Yes, the state practically collected enough gold from vodka taxes to build a glittering palace, or, at the very least, a really stylish ice sculpture. Imagine being that clever tax collector, cruising around town, collecting coinage like it was the world's ugliest bingo game. "A bottle of vodka?" he would chuckle. "That'll be about a month's wages and your firstborn." All while the peasants raised their glasses, fighting impending poverty, one tankard at a time. It appears that what starts as a simple drink becomes the very lifeblood of a nation, because who could resist a liquid that offers the alluring promise of warmth on a bleak winter's day, paired with the delicious thrill of potential hangover-induced regret? Yet as the thaw approached, so did questions whispering on the wind. Did vodka bring people together, or did it merely cast a pink-tinted haze over the bitter reality of life? While Boris maneuvers jovially through debates about what passes for breakfast debates, one can't help but wonder if the spirits weren't the ones truly in control. Maybe the vodka's secret ingredient was just a good dose of comic relief, like a punchline embedded in the tragedy of a winter that never ends. And as Boris and his fellow peasants huddle at the tavern, the conversations bounce around like drunken birds, poetic, ridiculous, yet oddly earnest. "You see," a curmudgeonly patron declares between sips, "beer is for the future, vodka is for the soul." After all, this is Russia, where the only thing colder than the air is the dismal prospect of another unyielding season without a proper winter festival to look forward to. Ultimately, while they drink away their cares and trade stories that shift from the mundane to the absurd, one thing remains true. In a land where the cold permeates every crevice of existence, vodka morphs into more than just a drink. It becomes a lifeline, a moment of laughter, and a break from the wintry darkness, perhaps even a strange sort of freedom that dances, albeit clumsily, on the ice. So raise your cup high, dear listener, and toast to history, mirth, and the glorious absurdity of life. Chapter 18: The Bottle and the Ledger. Hey guys, welcome back to the cozy nook of mildly interesting history. Tonight, we're about to wade through something stickier than your last encounter with a toddler and a jar of peanut butter. The turbulent world of 1750s Russia, where the ledgers of debt were as common as the frost on your nose. Imagine being a peasant, standing in a dimly lit tavern, signing your name like it was a promissory note for a particularly reckless round of vodka shots. Welcome to a world where your financial struggles are recorded in ink, just as your dreams of finding warmth are marked by the frosty shimmer of the vodka bottle. But before we plunge into this icy abyss, let me ask you, have you ever regretted a purchase so profoundly that you wondered if it was the universe's way of suggesting you take up knitting as a hobby? Or have you ever tried to negotiate a bar tab like you were campaigning for mayor, but ended up settling for the slightly less glamorous title of the person who drinks vodka on credit? And what's that sound? Oh yes, it's the sound of good decision-making being tossed into the icy Neva River. So, dim the lights, grab a comfortable blanket, and maybe a stuffed bear for good measure, and settle in. Because, congratulations, you've just woken up in 1750, surrounded by peasant life, where hopes are as scarce as a warm slice of bread, and the main currency of survival isn't just potatoes, but a hefty measure of vodka. In the rickety tavern, the atmosphere buzzes with the sound of laughter and the clinking of glasses, where people gather not just to drown their sorrows, but to keep warm in the frigid air. You can almost hear the icebergs cracking beyond the windows, but here it's all about that convivial fog of happy debauchery, or at least a hazy illusion of it. On this particular wintry evening, your friend Ivan, a burly fellow with a beard as tangled as an old fishing net, is enthusiastically signing a ledger. And what a ledger it is! The pages filled with an artistic array of names, debts, and the occasional doodle of a goat wearing a hat. That goat sure seems to be a local celebrity, but let's focus on the financial despair taking place. With your face mirroring Ivan's furrowed brow, you watch as the tavern keeper, a robust woman who could probably wrestle a bear and win, slaps a bottle of vodka before Ivan like it's a high-stakes game of Monopoly. The ledger he signed earlier represents the credit cycle. Oh wait, I mean the debt cycle of ruinous efficiency. Can you imagine modern-day kids trying to reconcile those terms while juggling their TikTok accounts? So, take a deep breath and picture this. Vodka is the lifeblood of the tavern, a magical elixir that transports these hard-working souls into a realm of forgetfulness. But let's be honest, the only thing more complex than their financial situations is their ability to balance vodka shots with home-cooked cabbage soup. As Ivan gulps down the golden liquid, he appears freshly elated, as if he's finally conquered the eternal battle against winter. It's as if he's fought a dragon and emerged victorious, only to realize the dragon was nothing more than a frozen turnip. "Another round!" Ivan shouts, raising a glass, which surely weighs more than his entire monetary worth. Do you think he ever considers whether tomorrow will be the day his entire existence will be punctuated with regret? Probably not, because vodka is his fleeting happy thought, or at least his ability to convince himself that yesterday's debt doesn't exist. Now, while you sit back and sip your imaginary vodka, you can feel the city's pulse beating with every laugh and sigh from the crowd. The tavern keeper nods like a bemused parent listening to a child's outlandish story, her apron stained with remnants of forgotten meals and abandoned dreams. It's incredible how the tavern serves as both a refuge and a financial graveyard, each sip blurring the lines between merriment and impending doom. As the night progresses, stories are exchanged like favors, though no one is really sure how anyone could ever repay them. Laughter and frozen dreams intermingle, much like a poorly brewed cocktail. The idea of life becoming a series of burdens mingled with fleeting pleasures, echoing in the spirited refrain, "If you can't pay your debts, at least you can drown them." While you observe the chaotic interplay of friendships forged in intoxication, you can't help but wonder, is this what happens when a government realizes that taxing vodka could fund an empire? Because by the 19th century, these sweet bottles would account for nearly a third of the state's revenue. Can you imagine the conversation around that board meeting? Let's raise an extra bit of vodka tax. Up next, corporate retreats at the vodka distillery. The air thickens with camaraderie as Ivan suddenly turns earnest, outlining vast plans for better days, where economic freedom intertwines with a steady supply of vodka. You can hardly process how a few more shots might tangibly change the course of history, especially when the barbs of reality curl back around him like a dog returning to its favorite blanket. Not each shot leads to freedom, folks, but it leads to the wildly hilarious illusion of it. And just when you think it couldn't get fancier, there's a raucous shout as another peasant triumphantly enters the tavern. Have you all heard? We're getting a distillery. Cue the wild applause louder than a circus, quickly followed by resounding hiccups of approval. As the crowd continues to toast to futures brightened by a flask, you find a strange comfort in their merriment, a fleeting moment amidst the cold dreariness. Vodka in hand, laughter swirling, you can't ignore the juxtaposition, a life balanced precariously between sustenance and survival, where the simple exchange of a ledger breathes life into hopes and dreams, no matter how clouded they may be. And so, amid the buzzing tavern, you're left with one thought: cheers to survival in the icy grips of history. Stay tuned, dear friends, as we dive deeper into the frigid designs of vodka and the curious fate of the Russian Empire, where every drop tells a story and every sip might just mark a momentous affair. Chapter 19: The Post-Vodka Resurrection. Imagine, if you will, a sunny morning in a Russian village during the middle of the 1750s. The dawn breaks like a reluctant guest, showing up to a party just after everyone has had too much to drink. The light spills lazily across the frost-kissed fields, illuminating the disheveled aftermath of last night's escapades. Here you are, taking in the vibrant chaos, babies cocooned in blankets like little dumplings, dogs chasing sticks that probably used to be part of someone's doorframe, and adults who seem to be exercising the fine art of not falling over with all the grace of a malfunctioning marionette. You can hear the faint whispers of potential. Fields that should be bustling with hard-working hands have become a tableau of sleepy families, wobbling like penguins trying to find their balance after one too many vodka shots. Ever found yourself fielding a work email
while all you can think about is the warmth of your bed? This is that, but multiplied by 100 and served with a side of haphazard life choices. Just look around. Burly men are still wearing last night's drinking attire, their tunics stained with a questionable mix of cabbage soup remnants and the evening's poppy seed pastries. You can almost hear their thoughts slurring through the fog of too much vodka and not enough sleep. Did that cabbage soup have alcohol in it? As you step deeper into this sun-soaked comedy of errors, your senses are bombarded by the aroma of damp earth mingling with the lingering scent of warmed vodka breath. Can you smell the vodka-infused hope clinging to the air like a stubborn dog with an affinity for muddy puddles? You might even feel for a moment that you understand why this elixir became the elixir of choice. After all, it takes an extra hearty spirit to wake up in a land where the fields lie fallow, relying on fuzzy memories of yesterday's heavy tippling. Let's take a moment to appreciate the village folks, shall we? Picture a stout woman trying to shoo her children towards the fields. She flails her arms in a dance that seems to suggest she's either summoning a crop spirit or desperately trying to keep one of her offspring from falling into the nearby pig pen. Come on, if you don't help with the harvest, you'll grow up to be an even worse drinker than your father. Ah, the motivating rhetoric of a vodka-soaked family legacy. Always a crowd pleaser, especially if it's delivered with a hint of maternal love. But what do you do when the fields have conspired against you? As you look across the landscape, a cascade of unharvested grain reflects the somber state of affairs, and the cries for sustenance echo off the valleys like echoes of last night's laughter. Simply put, while glances of wheat wave gently in the wind, these families seem more interested in napping than agrarian achievements. And when you realize that this widespread camaraderie is fueled not by
Philanthropy, but by a state-sanctioned culture of vodka consumption, you can't help but giggle, even through your exhaustion. Imagine if the government of today got their taxes from oversized frappuccinos instead of incomes. With the new coffee tax, we can finally fund the roads and make sure the cappuccinos are creamy enough for all. Talk about modern-day madcap schemes. Yet here's the kicker. Russian peasants didn't just grapple with their finances and family drama. Taxes on alcohol by the state began accumulating at a staggering rate. By the 19th century, vodka taxes would contribute nearly a third of the state's revenue. You can just picture the imperial officials sitting around an opulent table, papers strewn across it like live chickens at an auction. "Gentlemen," one would stammer, "I believe we've found the solution to all our problems. Let's keep the people divided and tipsy." A pointed truth darts through your mind. In a land where bread and vodka often share the same line in household budgets, you can bet that every family's ledger, filled with an enticing series of chicken scratches and giant capital letters, tells a similar story. Here's a thought that lands heavier than a barrel of bad vodka. Are we really any different today? Ever stressed out about rising grocery prices while your coffee habit swells proportionately. As the sun climbs higher in the sky, your weary neighbors are raised from their stupor by the two-pronged attack of sunlight and a dog's enthusiastic bark. With one heroic leap, a fellow peasant attempts to salvage their dignity, staggering to their feet with the grace of a newborn deer. Their roaring laughter mixes with the sobering realization that it's time to tackle the fields at last. Because the only thing worse than an empty harvest season is having to pay off last night's debts. Yet somehow, as you watch them slip and slide through knee-deep mud and half-hearted apologies punctuated by snorts of laughter, you find solace in the absurdity of it all. And just like that, amid the post-vodka resurrection of a town slowly waking to another day of hard-earned chaos, they blindly chase a semblance of normalcy. Yes, dreams of glories achieved over hearty bowls of cabbage soup reign supreme here, where yesterday's vodka dribbles mingle with muddy churns of fate. You find a strange comfort breathing in the unpredictable juxtaposition of life, where vodka isn't just a drink, but a badge of survival, an ode to familial bonds, and perhaps a cautionary tale that tomorrow all bets or debts are off. So, dear friends, nestled here in the heart of 1750s peasant Russia, let's toast to the intricate dance of hope and hilarity. With every stumble through unharvested opportunity, may we lift our glasses to the wisdom of knowing that laughter, mixed with liquid courage, treads a fine line between hilarity and hardship. Because let's be honest, isn't it remarkable how something as sweet as vodka can make peasants brave enough to face their day one wobbly step at a time? Chapter 20. The Vodka Blueprint. Ah, vodka, the magical elixir that binds Russia tighter than a babushka's headscarf on a windy day. It seems our dear Catherine the Great had a vision, a blueprint not just for castles, but for distilleries, the world's finest, state-controlled centers of all things alcoholic. Picture this, a grand portrait of Catherine behind her, your eyes drawn to the tireless geometric diagrams sprawled out on a table, each one meticulously planned as if they were the schematics for a rocket ship. You'll soon see, however, that these blueprints were less about actual rockets and more about rocket-fueled revenues. You've just been dropped into the grand palace of the 1760s. The air is filled with the rich scent of fuzzy candor and precious secrets, and you might even hear the rustle of scrolls, like a dramaturg behind the scenes at a particularly chaotic production of The Russian Vodka Chronicles. Imagine strolling through this opulent room, where every piece of furniture is a reminder of Catherine's flair for turning werewolves of the past into vodka-wielding shepherds of industry. Catherine didn't just want to sip vodka, she wanted to own the whole distillation shebang, making the peasant's favorite pastime a glittering revenue stream for her imperial coffers. Much like that time you tried to turn your childhood lemonade stand into a franchise. Except in this case, the lemonade was, let's say, considerably stronger, and the only thing getting squashed was the competition, and likely a few expectations. As you ponder this historic entrepreneurship, Just how did this great lady of vodka make her mark? Picture the scene. Catherine herself, adorned in a gown more lavish than any wedding cake, bustling about like a proud parent at a science fair. Look at my vodka. It's not just distilled, it's hygienically distilled. And it only costs, what's that charming peasant thing, next to nothing. Her ambitious spirit showed in her meticulous plans, detailing standardized state distilleries, because who wouldn't want their vodka made with the precision of a watchmaker turning gears for the royal timepiece? Imagine the disgruntled peasants, however, who, up until this point, may have thought distilling their own vodka was about as normal as distilling the essence of a potato-powered rocket at their kitchen sink. You've been dreaming of producing spirits, only to realize those dreams are larger than the cedar barrels your neighbor keeps stockpiling. But there's a state-run vodka distillery now? What's next? State-sponsored karaoke nights? And so enters the vodka economy. Just picture it. By the 19th century, the numbers were staggering. Vodka taxes alone were expected to account for nearly a third of the behemoth that was the Russian government's revenue. You can just visualize bureaucrats organizing late-night dinners around barrels of vodka instead of bread as elegant counsel
Slips away into tipsy debates about empires and taxes. Gentlemen, they might say, as their eyes twinkle with ambition, if we keep our populace tipsy enough, they might forget who's actually running the show. Talk about a fiscal strategy that could only come to fruition over a few shots. Now, let's not forget about the logistics behind this liquid gold. What do you suppose the conversation was like when colleagues debated the location of these distilleries? How about near the river? It has nice views. Or on a hill, easier access for barrel rolling. Honestly, it must have morphed into quite the running gag, much like deciding which pub in your neighborhood serves the best gluten-free IPA on a Saturday night. But with great vodka comes great responsibility, right? And here we swim back into the murky waters of life in peasant Russia. Imagine a poor villager who wakes up one fine day, his head throbbing more than a drumline at a village festival. His wife storms in for a morning chat, lamenting, "Vanya, love, how about you stop drinking the profits and start controlling the distillation?" Picture him half sitting up, contemplating the murky depths of his barrel, thinking, well, that's one way to control things. But alas, the thought of taking on state policy was enough to make his hangover flare into existential dread. So there you are, nestled into the depths of ignorance and inebriation, pulling at your thoughts about political bureaucracy built atop fermented potatoes. You might just find yourself questioning the usefulness of vodka in propelling the economy, or contemplating launching your own vodka venture, potentially far less controlled than Catherine's. Why is no one ever talking about how to tap into these quirky family recipes? Through every sip and sketch of Catherine's vodka distillery empire, you're lulled into a sense of bizarre importance. Distilling those thoughts, layered with humor and hydrating vodka wisdom, offers a gently absurd understanding of how state-controlled spirits led to a financial roller coaster for every sober soul in Russia, chasing the ever-elusive morning after. May your dreams tonight dance among the blueprints of history, twirling through distilleries and loving the absurdity of life played out across cobblestones washed in vodka-laden wisdom.
Who knew the steamy tales of Catherine the Great would lead to raucous dreams of untamed spirits in sleepy little Russian villages? Tomorrow, when you await, take a moment to appreciate how stories from the past bubble to the surface, reminding us all that sometimes it's hilariously okay to run on vodka, and everything else can simply wait until the morning light.
Chapter 21. The Secret Distillery. Hey guys, welcome back. Tonight we dive into something murkier than that questionable takeout you forgot in the fridge. A hidden forest barn in 1750s Russia. Imagine it. A musty wooden structure shrouded in darkness, where the whispers of clandestine activity hang in the air like the scent of, well, vodka. So, buckle up as we explore this bubbling cauldron of rebellion, and be prepared to chuckle, because in all of Russia, nothing says freedom quite like a glorified backyard moonshine operation. Before we begin, if you enjoy this quirky jaunt through history, consider liking, subscribing, and maybe commenting on your favorite historical misadventure. But only if you actually enjoy this. No pressure. Now, dim the lights, hug a pillow, and imagine you're a peasant soldiering through the murky shadows, wondering if your neighbors can smell the alcohol. Spoiler, they totally can. While contemplating life's trickiest questions. What would you give for a mouthful of smooth vodka after a long day? What if someone accidentally drinks from your moonshine pot? Is that what they mean when they say, sharing is caring? Congratulations! You've just woken up in 1750, where the vodka flows like a surging river of liquid courage, and your distillation operation might just cost you your life, if the vodka doesn't get you first. Picture this: a small, unauthorized still bubbling away in a barn, harmonizing with the sounds of crickets and the occasional rustle of disapproving crows. On the inside, the peasant you've transformed into is clutching a mason jar filled with frothy samagon, the notorious homemade Russian vodka, like a middle schooler clutching their first report card. Let's talk about the setting of this tiny revolution. In the dim light, the barn is basically a summer camp for alcoholic dreams and existential crises. You can almost taste the anxiety hanging in the air. There you stand, our hopeful moonshiner, with beads of sweat trickling down your forehead. Are my neighbors judging my life choices again? You wonder, while furtively stirring your bubbling creation, avoiding death by state patrol, one sip at a time. Now, let's break the absurdity down with a sprinkle of sensory delight. The barn smells of hay and a whiff of something suspiciously fermented, kind of like a college dorm after finals week. The still hisses gently like an angry cat trying to express its annoyance. And if you close your eyes, you might just hear your grandmother warning you about taking risks. Or was that just the neighbor's goat? Honestly, hard to tell in the ruckus of midnight brewing. Now, imagine your fellow peasants. They're huddled nearby, sharing conspiratorial glances
as they unwrap awkward bundles of potatoes. Is it worth it? What if the authorities find out? Oh, the melodrama. It's like an episode of Survivor, but instead of tropical islands, everybody's battling
Grim prospects of boredom in the state monopoly on alcohol, and participating in a secret still operation. It's like tech support for your neighbor's Wi-Fi, fraught with danger, confusion, and never quite legal. But let's not forget the taxes. Oh, those delightful state taxes. By the 1800s, vodka became a fiscal lifeline for Mother Russia, pulling in nearly 1/3 of the state's revenue. So here you are, clutching your homemade spirit and knowing you're not only defying regulations, but giving the finger to the Imperial bank account one sip at a time. What a warped sense of freedom. It's like selling lemonade at a markup while your neighbor's charging everyone for water. Purely revolutionary. And hey, let's indulge the absurdity by imagining the bureaucrats sitting around, sipping, you guessed it, state-sanctioned vodka. What do you think their secret ingredient is, one might ask, polishing their monocle? Rumors say it's fairy dust mixed with the misery of peasants. Chuckles circle around like the jokes at the end of a long week. But these conversations always circle back to one uniform thought. How do we keep the people tipsy enough to forget our pesky rule? Ah, the art of governance. Meanwhile, the villagers are weaving tales of grandeur. Why should the state control all the distilleries? Someone braves to say one evening. Are we not noble masters of our own grain? A murmur of agreement ripples throughout the drinking circle, only to dissolve in a haze of vodka-induced giggles. And oh, the irony. Here you stand, risking everything with your bubbling bachelor degree in alternative alcohol production, while outside, whispers of your endeavor become the stuff of legends, mystical tales told to children about hero-diddly peasants. But forget the myth-making for a moment. The reality of the secret distillation of Samagon lies in a bittersweet paradox. You realize that, in your quest for liquid independence, you've concocted more headaches than anyone ever signed up for. Ever tried hiding a bubbling vat of alcohol from the authorities while baking bread? It's like juggling flaming torches while riding a unicycle on a tightrope over a pool of alligators. Ambitious, but mostly just risky. As we journey through these raucous nighttime escapades in the forest barn, observe the charm of absurd rebellion. The bubbling cauldron of Samagon becomes emblematic of the discontent simmering in the hearts of peasants all over Russia, an earnest distillation of life's simpler joys and absurdities amidst the oppressive reign of high taxes. So let your dreams tonight drift and dive, side by side with the bubbling essence of rebellion, swimming through a rich spectacle of history. Picture yourself tiptoeing across the forest floor, hiding from the state while holding on to visions of freedom, all crystallized under the spectral moonlight. Because if lives are measured in the whispers of stills and vodka-laden jokes, well, maybe that's the history worth raising a glass to. Just, make sure it's a glass of something a little less state-controlled and a little more homemade. Chapter 22. The Uprising that ended in a toast. Hey guys, welcome back. Tonight we find ourselves in a scene as ludicrous as a cat wearing a top hat at a dog show, but with just a hint more drama. Think a bustling city square in 1765 Russia during a political uprising. The air is thick, not with tension, but something far more potent, the sweet, intoxicating scent of vodka. That's right. Imagine a crowd restless and ready to shake the chains of tyranny, but instead finding themselves promptly distracted by free booze. So buckle up, because we're diving into a history lesson about feisty peasants, vodka-fueled camaraderie, and an uprising that found its spirit, quite literally. Before we dive in, if you enjoy this historical detour as much as you enjoy your next pint, preferably not the cheap stuff, please consider liking, subscribing, and commenting on your favorite historical mishap. But only if you actually enjoy this. No pressure. Now, dim the lights, fluff that pillow, and settle in as we pour a round of absurd questions into the great mug of 18th century life. Ever wondered if you could solve world hunger one potato at a time? Or how many shots it would take to convince your entire village to revolt against oppression, and then promptly sing 99 bottles of vodka on the wall? Can you imagine how quickly your plans would disintegrate into karaoke night? Congratulations, you've just woken up in 1765, where the streets are alive with the sounds of rebellion and a tinny, off-key rendition of a Russian folk song echoing about the square, fueled by a few too many rounds of vodka. Picture this. The crowd is a melting pot of discontent, rumbles rippling through like a well-salted loaf of bread. The air smells of fresh-baked goods mixed with something a little punchier. That's right, my friend. The air is about to be filled with the glorious spirits of rebellion. And by spirits, I mean the liquid kind. Let's talk about the scene before us. The atmosphere practically crackles with energy. It's like a pep rally for peasants. Drummers beat out rhythms on furry drums, while heralds wielding flags, did I mention they were slightly tipsy, create patterns that might make a kindergarten art teacher proud. Voices blend into a cacophony that sounds suspiciously like cats arguing over the best sunbeam. Exactly the blend of confusion and motivation you'd expect when everybody's hoping to throw off federal rule, but instead get distracted by free alcohol. Meanwhile, local government officials, caught in their own questionable whims, decide to take a bold approach to quell the restlessness. What do we do? One might have mused in a high-pitched office voice, tapping their quill on a dwindling budget. Let's give 'em vodka. Now, if this isn't the strategy of a particularly desperate party planner, I don't know what is. Picture these officials mustering all the authority of over-caffeinated squirrels, handing out plastic cups with all the grace of a cat in a bath. Drink up, comrades. It's state-sponsored. Might as well enjoy it. And what do you know? The crowd, once rife with agitation, suddenly transforms into a choir of rowdy folk, harmonizing like the world's most untrained ensemble. It's as if the vodka was a magical elixir, stripping away inhibitions faster than a bad magician at a children's birthday party. They go from chanting, "Down with the Tsars," to something far less coherent and far more amusing, something like, "Who needs a czar when we have this bizarre potato juice?" Let's set the scene further, shall we? The square is a riot of colors. Vendors hastily throw together makeshift snack tables, peddling the culinary pride of Russian history. Pickled everything, cucumbers, herring, and a dessert that might be glaringly similar to what your unkind aunt called casserole. Discouraged morale becomes jubilant camaraderie, all drizzled in the heavy scent of fermented goodness, and if you squint just right, you might see the night shimmering like an oil slick from all the people dancing around, spilling drinks and waving their arms as if they were conducting an orchestra made entirely of crows. What you might miss in all this revelry is a sudden twist. The crowd, now inebriated and carousing, forgets why they were so upset in the first place. You've seen it, haven't you? A lousy workday that dissolves into happy hour, where your plans become nothing more than, "Who's taking me home?" Yep, the rebellion fades away as the crowd leans into the warm embrace of alcohol-fueled euphoria, spilling their grievances into the now lukewarm puddles at their feet. Now, if we pause for a moment, let's soak up just how absurdly picturesque this scene truly is. It's hilarious to think that a political uprising could just slip away like a toddler from a playdate when offered a cupcake. Ah, the irony. Here the peasants were, armed with passion and fervor, now too busy perfecting their renditions of famous Russian drinking songs to remember why they were angry in the first place. But then, as the sun begins to dip below the horizon and the vodka gives way to exhaustion, the spontaneous revelry finds its conclusion. The square is filled with toppled figures, slumped against one another like tragic art pieces in a gallery dedicated to human folly. The government officials, watching this soft spectacle of drunken camaraderie, could only nod in disbelief. It kind of becomes clear. Sometimes the strongest protest is simply raising a glass to good times. So, while we drift off into slumber tonight, let the echoes of that fateful night linger. A blend of rebellion, camaraderie, and an absurdly relaxed way of handling political strife with the gentle guiding hand of vodka. Imagine yourself tucked in, not amid the chaos, but among the laughter of those who discovered their true strength lay not in battle, but in
Bonding over a shared pint, singing like there's no tomorrow. And if that isn't a testament to the human spirit, my friend, I don't know what is. Let your dreams tonight sway in the laughter of those who learn that sometimes water and the politics of drink can carry us far, even if we inevitably wade back home stumbling. Chapter 23. A Toast to Thrift and Trouble. Hey guys, welcome back. Tonight we dive into something as packed with flavor as a grandma's secret borscht recipe, but way juicier. The world of vodka-fueled peasants in 18th century Russia. Picture it, bustling taverns, gleeful toasts, and a sneaky peasant wife sitting alone in a drafty hut, wondering where her husband's paycheck disappeared. Likely into the bottom of the tankard, or the depths of a barrel. If you've ever wondered why your last paycheck vanished faster than your motivation on a Monday morning, stick around. Before we pour ourselves into this history lesson smoother than a well-aged vodka, if you enjoy these nightly jaunts into the absurdities of yesteryear, please go ahead and like, subscribe, and comment with your best "Where's my money?" stories. But only if you actually enjoy it, of course. We don't want to twist your arm like a drunken serf. Now, let's sink into the time when vodka wasn't just a party starter, but the very lifeblood of the Russian Empire. All right, close your eyes and imagine this. What would it be like to live on the edge of daily catastrophe, budgeting just enough for bread and a pint, or perhaps a pint and then some bread? Have you ever lost track of time at a happy hour? Picture that, but your best pals are sozzled peasants, and your tab is the state treasury. Congratulations! You've just woken up in 1750 Russia, where the atmosphere crackles with a spirit of camaraderie that's about as stable as a Jenga tower made of vodka bottles. We find ourselves in a lively tavern, chock full of boisterous toasts and laughter ringing out like a pack of overzealous squirrels eager to have a go at a nut festival. Picture this. One side of the split screen is our boisterous tavern, where the peasants, flaunting their rustic bravado like they're auditioning for a game show, raise their mugs and cheer as if their very lives depend on it. The other side? A lonely, cold hut where you, yes, the poor peasant wife, sit waiting, tapping your fingers on your thigh and wondering just what devilry has taken your hard-earned coins. Imagine the sweet, sweet scent of alcohol shaking hands with the delicious aroma of a home-cooked meal. You can almost taste it, can't you? It's that garlicky pickled herring, tangy and just as likely to leave a ghost of a breath as your Uncle Boris after a few rounds. Hearts are light, laughter is loud, but your heart? It's feeling about as heavy as a sack of bricks because your dear husband, that lovable rascal, has vanished into the haze of revelry. As the scene flips from the carefree tavern to your chilly abode, you can hear snippets of loud, rhapsodic singing wafting through the frosty window. A choir too tipsy to see the pitch. "Another round for Ivan!" echoes through the walls as your mind spirals into the type of circling thoughts that resemble a hamster on a wheel. Has this man really turned a simple night of revelry into an Olympic event? On the one hand, the peasants leap and dance, their boots moving to the raucous melodies sung by a more spirited version of their local bard. The very essence of joy mixed with more joy and just a sprinkle of regret. Their festive chants, completely out of tune, mind you, mingle with the essence of distillation encased in every barrel, becoming a recipe that calls to mind a 7th grade science experiment gone wonderfully off the rails. But let's not overlook your side of the screen. You're getting colder by the minute, wondering if you should start a new hobby, like knitting sweaters out of sheer frustration or artistic passion. The flickering fire in your hearth looks more like a guidance light from a spaceship than a source of warmth. Great if you're an astronaut, but less than helpful for your toes.
Ever tried warming your hands over bread left too long on the shelf? Slightly burnt, not particularly thrilling, but hey, no one said domestic bliss was a path dotted with daisies and free-flowing vodka. And as your mind wanders, you ponder the complexities of how your husband can party like it's his birthday every day, while you sit here like a metaphorical wallflower, crying into your unrefined cabbage soup. You wonder if he's sipping the state-owned concoction while eyeing fellow revelers' wallets. Maybe it never occurred to anyone back in the day that taxes, almost entirely funded by vodka sales, were just a slippery slope into a vat of debt. It's like realizing your rent goes to fund the gambling habit of a squirrel in a tuxedo. Your thoughts are interrupted by the sounds of boisterous singing and laughter outside, prematurely brushing the frost off your window with the warmth of camaraderie. Your heart might sink, but there's something undeniably funny about the situation. They're numb to it all. Your husband, who should be home discussing how to afford tomorrow's supper, is out there, only slightly more articulate than a drunken parrot on the creaking tavern floor. But amidst the clamor, there's a small twist of fate that could pull the story together for both peasants and their fair ladies. Unity in revelry. You see, while your husband is out abandoning every ounce of responsibility, he's also supporting the very empire that brings not only vodka, but also grain, taxes, and, let's be honest, every other person's payment for the lovely feast you never signed up for. Double-edged sword, or just your typical Tuesday? As the uplifting energy of excessive merriment reaches its peak, the question remains, will they remember to take care of those at home? Or will tomorrow be another story of, "I swear I'll make it up to you, dear," over a plate of cold soup? A little vodka brings the spirit together, but good luck convincing anyone that a drunk man is a responsible husband. So as we take this whimsical journey into the essence of vodka-driven life in Russia,
Remember, even when it all seems hopeless and you feel like you're living in a sad sitcom, there's always room for absurd connections, however tipsy they may be. And perhaps the next time you wonder where your money went, you might just check for lingering spirits. Chapter 24, Vodka, the original soldier's cuddle. Hey guys, welcome back. Tonight we're diving headfirst into a history lesson colder than your ex's heart during a breakup text. A tale wrapped in ice and dipped in vodka. The frosty world of 19th century Russian soldiers. Imagine you're out in the vast, bleak expanse of snow, bundled up like a burrito, but still managing to feel every chill of that unforgiving wind. What if I told you those freezing soldiers were fueled not just by patriotism, but by something even more powerful? Vodka. The stuff kept their spirits high, or at least high enough to forget they were shoveling snow and not waltzing in a warm ballroom. So before we unfurl this tale as sweetly as a Matryoshka doll, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your best I can't feel my toes winter stories. Unless you actually enjoy feeling your toes, then keep those to yourself. Dim the lights, put on a cozy fan, because who needs realism when you can have ambience, and get comfortable. Now, picture this. Have you ever been so cold that even the thought of touching ice cream makes you shiver? Or found yourself wondering if you could fashion a hot cocoa out of memories and good intentions while wrapped in 3 blankets? What would it be like to be a soldier, forced to barter every ounce of dignity just to stay warm in the Russian winter? Ever sat at work, daydreaming about a bottle of something extra to help you survive those endless meetings? Congratulations, you're already halfway to understanding our weary soldiers. All right, take a deep breath and open your eyes. Phew! Congratulations! You've just woken up in 1800s Russia, where the air is so cold it could freeze a bear's breath, and even thoughts come with a chill. Let's step into the shoes of a soldier, a character you might miss at Christmas parties, unless you need someone to hold your beer. You're outside, dressed in wool that's scratchier than the internet's best trolls, shivering in formation while your sergeant shouts commands that could curdle milk. The ground beneath you is a slippery mess of ice, mud, and occasional mystery substances, perfect for practicing those fancy footwork skills you never signed up for. But here's the secret weapon in your pocket. Not that there's really a pocket on that old tunic. You, my friend, have your ration of spirits, a generous splash of vodka disguised as courage, or maybe just a litigator for homesickness. Imagine sipping that liquid warmth as it rolls down your throat, a brief moment of euphoria strong enough to convince you that fighting for the empire is now a valid career choice. Because who needs Starbucks when you're serving the Tsar? As you clutch that flask of liquid gold, you realize it's more than just a drink. It's a lifeline. These little bottles of joy cost the empire nearly 1/3 of its revenue in taxes, because, let's be honest, some things just make the
World go round, like failure and covert bottles of vodka. But these weren't just any ordinary soldiers sipping holiday cheer. Oh no. They were the front lines of history, caught between freezing temperatures and the ever-looming threat of their own despair. Ever thought about how it'd feel to turn the same rations that are meant to keep you warm into a potential hangover? Your daily dilemma is not just what to wear or when to speak up. It's whether you'll survive another day of hypothermia or drunken caroling. Let's dig a little deeper into the psyche of this vodka-fueled hero. Imagine waking up, looking out at a landscape that resembles a never-ending frozen tundra, a world as barren as your late-night fridge. You've got 2 options: face the harsh realities of life, or take a shot. Spoiler alert, the second option sounds like a far more relatable Tuesday. You chug it down and immediately wonder if you should have saved it for later. Then again, who will be left to whine about the cold once you start running in circles around the camp like a supercharged Russian snowflake? As the sun rises, or perhaps just barely squeaks by, you stumble out to meet your comrades, each more red-nosed than the last. It's a gathering of human blimps, all puffed up, whispering about why they thought it was a good idea to join the military in the first place. You're asking for courage when you really just need to convince yourself to grab your socks out of the frozen landscape. And oh, the camaraderie that forms over those vodka shots. It was an unspoken agreement among soldiers. Drink until you can't remember the frosty ground, or that you've technically signed up to fight. Both are equally important for morale. Somewhere, deep down, you can almost convince yourself it's a policy, like having a drilling buddy on moving day. Everyone loves to have a solid reason for their questionable habits. But let us prepare for the inevitable. What happens when the party's over? This rugged band of merry men soon discovers that drunken camaraderie doesn't come with a manual for frostbite. And as the last remnants of vodka fade from the realm of possibility, the warmth leaves your chest and swiftly transforms into defeat, a feeling only slightly better than the aftermath of last night's dinner experiment. Just when you think it couldn't get worse, your commander shouts, "Forward, march!" With the grace of a wounded polar bear, you soldier on, only partly warmed by the vodka, brave enough to carry your spirits, while snow drapes ever so lovingly over you. So next time you pour yourself a drink, looking to warm up from the inside out, remember, no amount of vodka can protect you from the Siberian winds, unless, of course, you take it with a rock-solid plan for escape. And as you embrace your frozen fate, hang on to the thought that, hey, at least you're not left behind in the frosty depths of history. So, stick around as we toast to the joys, follies, and sleepless nights of those vodka-driven soldiers, from keeping warm to keeping memories alive, even when the world is a slippery ice rink. Here's to humanity, fighting through one shot of despair at a time. Chapter 25. Vodka, the spirit of warmth and woe. Ah, the iconic image of a 19th century military barracks, a frigid, dreary place that could double as a set for the world's most tragic, winter-themed romantic comedy. You can almost hear the wind howl through the creaking wooden beams, a sound eerily reminiscent of a cat complaining about its dinner. Picture it, dimly lit, with the scent of unwashed uniforms hanging in the air, and a light dusting of snow in the corners that had seen more seasons than some soldiers. It's a mesmerizing mix of humanity's finest, a veritable museum of misery. And here you are, taking a seat in that very barrack. You have become one of those weary soldiers, staring blankly at the wall, as if it might whisper sweet nothings at any moment. You glance sideways at your cot, where a solitary bottle of vodka stands like a beacon of hope, or perhaps a lighthouse of despair within this desolate landscape. The clear liquid inside catches the flickering light, glistening with the promise of warmth, not unlike a rogue sunbeam daring to penetrate the unyielding gloom. But let's talk about your current predicament. Ever felt so bored you could count the number of blades of grass in a field? Multiply that sensation by 100, throw in a heaping spoonful of cold, and drizzle it with a thick syrup of existential dread, and voila, you've arrived at the life of a Russian soldier circa 1800, where your biggest decision of the day is whether to fight for glory or just stay in your cot and hope for the best. Spoiler alert, the vodka will help you decide. Imagine this. Every morning, you wake up to a comforting layer of frost on your body, that delightful note that says, "Congratulations, you're still alive in a place the sun clearly forgot." You shuffle over to the common area,
dressed in layers of wool that scratch at your skin and feel about as warm as a polar bear's hug from behind a stretchy ice cube. You think, today might not be my day, but if I just keep moving, surely the phantoms of restlessness will leave me alone. But just as you sit down, an icy chill breathes down your neck, reminding you that Mother Nature could care less about your motivational speeches. Now, picture a fellow soldier, once a bright-eyed recruit, now reduced to grumbling about the frostbite on his pinky toe. He stares at you and mutters, "What do you think would happen if we just packed up and left this frozen wasteland? Maybe we could start a band called the Frostbitten Blues." You chuckle, but he's half serious, because really, who would choose this over a cozy corner cafe in St. Petersburg where the only drama is whether the pastries are too flaky? And, just as you contemplate a musical career that might change the world, one frostbitten toe at a time, you hear it. The sound of real treasure. A fellow soldier reaches into his coat and pulls out a bottle of vodka, holding it up like a trophy. Glistening in the dim light, it practically sings a siren song, whispering promises of warmth and temporarily silenced thoughts. "To the good life," he declares, and everyone knows this means you're about to enter a state where existential dread competes with mirthful inebriation. Let's be honest. Life in the barracks is like having a perpetual case of the winter blues. The routine is monotonous. Wake up, shiver, drill in formation, and dream about that one rare summer day that seems as fictional as unicorns. It's as riveting as listening to a 3-hour lecture on the history of potatoes. And here's the kicker. The government doesn't mind. The more vodka you drink, the less you contemplate the shackles of your existence. The military well understands that a tipsy soldier is a happy soldier. This isn't just about the drink, it's state policy. Hence the almost poetic tax collection where 1/3 of the state's revenue is derived from your favorite form of liquid courage. You pop the cork, and when that familiar whoosh escapes, it's as if you've opened a portal to an alternate universe, one where everything feels a little softer and perhaps a tad more exciting. Spirit-soaked bravery fills the air. Will you battle the enemies of the Tsar, or perhaps the barrels of hay that keep staring at you? The first sip kisses your lips, filling your belly with a warmth indicative of the fireside tales of yore. This will do, you think, as you sip it slowly, savoring the way it dances down your throat like an old friend returning to share wild stories. What tales, you ask? Simple. Your legs are no longer frozen, and you feel like the embodiment of bravery. While your comrades begin to sing what could be considered the worst rendition of a military march, you ponder, maybe we are the real legends all along. After another round of celebratory gulps, the camaraderie flourishes as laughter replaces the chill. Conversations about daily hardships morph into wild dreams of escape and adventure. You make plans to march across Europe. After all, why not? Only a few gentle reminders of treacherous winter storms and half-frozen rivers get in the way. But soon enough, the vodka's promise of warmth betrays you, wrapping you in a blanket of regret like a particularly unkind hug. Misplaced bravado fades, and you find yourself square in the crosshairs of the universe's plan to test your limits.
It's almost like the vodka and misery are in cahoots, plotting to keep you on this roller coaster of warmth and woe. Ah, the bittersweet irony. You're either feeling fantastic or spinning wildly into existential dread faster than you can chug another success-stained shot. As the night wears on, and the last remnants of your courage feel like fairy dust waiting to dissipate, you realize you're not just a soldier. You've become a symbol of resilience, one sip at a time, armed with the knowledge that if the world can freeze around you, you have the vodka and the warmth within to face anything, even the unrelenting inevitability of tomorrow's frigid dawn. So here's to you, the vodka-infused spirit of 1800s Russia. May your nights be warm, and your mornings be filled with the delicate dance of regret. But remember, when in doubt, always keep a little vodka and a warm blanket handy. Because life, it turns out, is a chilly adventure in a world best navigated with a bottle in hand, As our journey through the frosty lanes, smoky taverns, and shimmering palaces of Imperial Russia comes to a close, take a moment to let the day's stories settle gently in your mind. Tonight, we wandered beside peasants trudging through mud, monks stirring their first bubbling experiments, nobles wobbling through extravagant parties, and czars who built an empire on a drink that warmed the body while quietly draining the nation's strength. We laughed with them, grimaced with them, and watched the strange hilarity of a society trying to survive, sometimes through grit, sometimes through another glass. These were people who faced winters that could freeze hope, taxes that strained their livelihoods, and systems that demanded much while giving little in return. And yet they endured. They found reasons to gather, to sing, to toast, to celebrate, and even to stumble forward with a kind of stubborn resilience that only people shaped by hardship can carry. Their world was harsh, unpredictable, and often absurd, but still they made room for laughter. As you lie here now, wrapped in comfort far softer than the coarse wool of their days, maybe take a quiet moment to feel grateful for warm homes instead of icy cabins, clean water instead of questionable brews, medicine instead of liquid courage, and mornings that don't begin with a bucket of snow or a state tax collector at your door. History reminds us that even the simplest modern comforts are small miracles. So, let your breath slow, let your body sink deeper into rest, and allow the distant echoes of their struggles and triumphs to fade into a soft hush. The night is calm now, the story is complete, and you are safe, warm, and ready for sleep. Good night.